we're finally here. Welcome, my dear friends, the Green Scorpion here, celebrating a momentous occasion. I've been making countdowns for some time now, and as I hope you know, I set up a Patreon account a few years ago with certain milestones, and today, I'm happy to announce that we recently passed our first threshold of $500. This may seem like a humble goal to some, but guys, I'm overjoyed. There are a lot of reasons I do this channel, but my first priority is always to have fun and share my passion for video games with anyone who will listen. I didn't quit my day job, and YouTube is a pretty bad place to be if you're just in it for the money. But with the help of some dedicated fans, I was able to finance my obsessive, long-winded critiques. And if you've donated even $1 to me, or if you've helped me by watching, sharing, and commenting on my videos, then from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And to symbolize that thanks, here's the list I promised, the big one. My top 50 favorite video games of all time. Now I'm gonna admit, video games are my life, or at least a large percentage of it. And as such, this was no small task. I made sure to consider everything. On my first go, I had 151 games listed, even with the 1 per franchise rule. Yeah, enough to fill a Pokedex. Tears were shed while narrowing it down, but I think I got it. And for the next 5 videos, you're gonna hear it. This should go without saying, but these aren't what I consider the best games of all time. These are just the games that matter to me the most. Some I grew up with and hold precious memories for me, and many are based on experiences I've shared with friends, family, even this online community. Sometimes I can't explain why one game is listed higher than another, it's just what my heart tells me. And the heart is a pretty fickle thing. Ask me this question next year and my list will more than likely be a little different. I've even listed a couple of games that I discovered while working on this very countdown, so for the sake of my own sanity, I set a hard cutoff date of December 2018. So that means any games that I haven't played before or were released after that date are too late to apply. So sorry Soul Calibur 6 and sorry Devil May Cry 5. But on that note, it's time to get this party started. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my top 50 favorite video games of all time. When organizing these countdowns, ComicFoil and I have a little game we play with the lowest spot. We like to call them the Gatekeeper. It's our way of visualizing where the bar is set for getting onto the list. Our original Gatekeeper was an imposing one, Mortal Kombat Trilogy for the Nintendo 64. But at the last minute, a much faster fighting game snuck past it. The Capcom crossovers are a good showcase of high-energy brawling. Tatsunoko, SNK, and best of all, Marvel. Since the series evolved out of the X-Men vs. Street Fighter crossover, each entry brought a lot to the table, but oddly enough, my favorite is the first Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Heroes. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is great, but the giant roster is incredibly unbalanced with only like 6 characters seeing competitive play. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 got good once they released the Ultimate version, but those matches tend to boil down to rocket tag. Whoever can graze the opponent once and start an infinite combo wins. Speaking of infinite... yeah, they really dropped the ball on that one. Decent enough gameplay, but the roster leaves a lot to be desired. Larger than Clash of Heroes, I'll grant you, but it's just not Marvel vs. Capcom without Wolverine. Get that crap out of here! And yeah, I'm talking more about the other games here, but that's just because there's not a ton to say about Marvel 1. I just really like it. What few characters you get are fun and balanced, the matches are fast and energetic, landing hyper combos is super satisfying, and something about the game's color palette, it's so 90s. There's actually an old game store near my house that still has the arcade machine, and anytime I stop by, you know I'm going to be dropping some quarters on this one. It was a simpler time, but it was a time with Cyclops and Zangief, so it was a better time. It might surprise you to learn that there aren't any NES games in my top 50. A few made it close, and I certainly respect them for establishing what makes a game good, but I didn't have enough 8-bit in my childhood to hold much nostalgia, and when I go back to the best the console has to offer, well, there's some great games in here, but it's hard to grapple with the limitations of the late 80s. If only a game could capture the spirit of these classics without the shortcomings of the era. Looks like Yacht Games had the same idea. Tons of indie games go retro, but Shovel Knight just gets it. A quirky premise with just enough heart that we take it seriously, a bustling town like Zelda 2 without the frame drops, an interesting gallery of bosses a la Mega Man but with even more diversity, and a moveset that would make Uncle Scrooge proud. Shovel Knight looks 8-bit, but don't let that fool you. It emulates the feel of vintage platformers with a color and presentation they could never have managed. Not to mention that level design. These guys know what they're doing. Taking the best examples that the NES had to offer and giving them some serious refinement and polish. They don't just love Castlevania and Mega Man, they understand them, preserving their good points while fixing the bad. That's not even the complete package though. Sure, there's the different armors that can drastically influence your playstyle, and the cheat codes. Oh, so many cheat codes! But then there's the DLC that lets you play as Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, and King of Cards turned out to be just as fun. This isn't like Mega Man 9, where you just play through the game with slightly different properties either. These are each entirely new adventures with different stories and playstyles. Sure, it's the same locations, but it's amazing how much the game changes when you trade the shovel in for Plague Knight's bombs, and Spectre's campaign is straight up Ninja Gaiden, except fair. Yacht Games could probably milk this series forever if they wanted, but they've announced that after King Knight's expansion, they'll probably move on to something else, and I really respect that. This isn't the last indie game you'll see on this list, but for how well it plays, it'll give most AAA developers a run for their money. Funny thing about indie games is that they kind of take turns sitting in the spotlight, stealing attention from all other indie titles. A long time ago it was Cave Story, and 2014 it was Shovel Knight, and a year later everyone was raving about Undertale. Let's check the comment section. Yep, there it is. Obligatory comment that Undertale is overrated. Haters gonna hate. Listen, I know the hype around this game got a little out of control, and you've probably met a few really obnoxious Under fans. We're a passionate bunch. I'm not calling it my favorite game of all time, obviously, but this game really moved me. Much like Earthbound, which Undertale wants to be so much, Undertale sells itself as more of an experience than a game. As an RPG, it's bare bones, and more than a few times fun will be snatched away from you to make a point. It's hard to give it a solid score because so much of it depends on whether or not the deceivingly complex story resonates with you. For a lot of people, it did, so to them this game is a masterpiece, and those feelings are real. You weren't tricked into thinking this game was good. This game really is good. Though, if someone says they don't like it, maybe don't call them an idiot in the public forum. Let's just agree to like what we like, okay? Okay. Okay! Okay. Okay! Okay. So speaking as someone who loves this game, I love the offbeat humor. I love how some decisions can make a huge difference in the story. I love how other decisions affect you in smaller, more surprising ways. Toby Fox puts all of these little quirks into the programming. I'm still learning about different tricks and dialogue trees. I love how limited everything seems at first with the 8-bit art style, MIDI chiptunes, and clean, sterile battle mechanics, just so the game can pull off the facade in big boss fights and completely change what you thought were rules. And that music, one of my favorite soundtracks of all time for how well it reuses motifs of different characters and areas. Even if the game is aggravating in places, particularly Hotland and the entire Genocide run, I really respect Fox's decision to make them this way. Everything about the game feels purposeful. I slowly realized that I've had more fun thinking and talking about Undertale than actually playing it. But that's what makes it such a great game to share. Play it blind if you can, and then trade stories of how your run went. Did you kill anyone accidentally? How did the final boss make you feel? Sure, there are other games like Undertale, and maybe its time in the spotlight stole attention from other worthy indie games, but I'm really happy it's found so many people to love it. And let's face it, you're not really popular unless someone absolutely hates you. So I'd say Undertale is doing just fine. Did I come off a little strong back there? If you're one of those people who just can't enjoy Undertale because of all the excessive fandom around it, hey, I totally get where you're coming from. That's how I was at first with the Danganronpa series. It started with viewers telling me to play it, and that I can deal with. It's well known that I love the Ace Attorney games, and Danganronpa is like Ace Attorney turned up to 11. I knew it was something I'd probably enjoy. But then my friends all got into it, and were demanding I tried it, and when people are forcing me to play something, it's easy for me to get turned off by the whole thing. I'm a free gamer, I'll play it when I want to play it. And once I did, yeah, I see where everyone was coming from. Just calm down, alright? While it can't take the place in my heart reserved for Phoenix Wright, Danganronpa is a masterfully written mystery series, full of twists, turns, great humor, and gut-wrenching despair. It's also one of the hardest series to edit segments for because everything about it is a spoiler. And it's one of the top games that should not be spoiled. The premise is a great setup to gather a group of outlandish high schoolers and solve some morbid crimes. But not only does each case explore the characters and set you to find the murderer, it's also slowly trickling in details of the big mystery to the game's overall plot. The character portraits are really expressive, and the graphics take this fairly simple visual novel style and sends it on a roller coaster. There's just so much hype to these cases. As for which game I like the most, I have to go with Danganronpa 2. The first game for me is the best as a standalone mystery story, but 2 builds on it with a deeper plot and more refined mechanics. The third game is also really great, though maybe things got a little bit too ridiculous for me at times. And this is a series where your master of ceremonies is a vulgar animatronic teddy bear mascot that wants to kill people. 2 also has my favorite cast. Some of my favorites being Gundam, a dark magic enthusiast who seems to be from the wrong game, and Fuyuhiko, voted most likely to have already murdered someone. If you've played it, you already know it's good. If you haven't, give it a look. Unless you're faint of heart. Oh, and play the games in order. You'll be confused either way, but God help you if you start with the second game. Unless you count the Marvel side of Marvel vs. Capcom, I only have one licensed game on here. Dragon Ball FighterZ. It doesn't come up a lot, but I'm a huge DBZ fan. The series just begs to be gamified, and FighterZ is probably the best attempt at that, though you could make a pretty good argument for Budokai 3. Anime make for natural fighting game adaptations. All they need to do is stay true to the spirit of the TV show. But instead, they went the extra mile and made it one of the best fighting games to come out in years. All of your favorite characters are here: Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, Goku, Trunks, Krillin, Goku, Frieza, Buu, and of course, Goku. They even got Yamcha in there, and he's hilariously good. That might be the least faithful thing about this game. Also, give the graphic designers of this game some medals. Everyone in the roster looks like their anime counterparts, and the action looks smooth, clean, and colorful. Not to mention freaking insane. Not only is every fighter extremely fast, you're constantly setting off giant blasts and lasers that fill the whole screen. You're never safe in one place for more than a second, just like DBZ. No, scratch that, it's just how we remember DBZ, except real DBZ had these 10-minute charge-ups and tons of filler. Every match in FighterZ stacks up to the best the show has to offer, and the fan service is real. Character interactions are great, from Vegeta ever reluctant to work with anyone, Yamcha taking revenge when he defeats Nappa, and pretty much anything with Ginyu. You can tell the developers had a lot of love for the old days of American dubbed anime. I even like the inclusions from Dragon Ball Super. Yamcha versus Jiren? Yeah, this seems fair. Screw the power levels, I'm having fun. Time to get angry! But not the bad kind of angry. I love all these games. The kind of angry that makes really spectacular outro sequences. Yeah, I went a little overboard at the end of Berserkers, but a lot of folks seem to really appreciate the theatricality. That's just the kind of mood Asuras Wrath puts you in. FighterZ may be the best DBZ game out there, but Asuras Wrath taps into some primal source of what makes good anime so freaking hype. Over-the-top action, ludicrous scope, and show-stopping boss battles. All three are here in full force. It really gets the blood pumping. Asuras struggle to rescue his little girl, his rocky relationship with his godly brethren. The story's not gonna win a Pulitzer, but it's got enough adrenaline to get me on board with Asuras Rage, and it's just so much fun. Asuras Wrath is also my go-to example for how to do QuickTime events right. Too many games get bogged down by unfair, poorly implemented QTEs, but Asura's combat is built for these segments, placing them where you'd expect a big power-up moment to take place, and displays the inputs in a way that further simulates the mad energy of the battles. Most games spend 8 hours trying to build up to what Asura accomplishes in the first 10 minutes. Great for blowing off steam and blowing up Hindu gods. Man, Capcom, I can't believe you let these guys get away! It's not just QuickTime events that get a bad rap. I also think we get a little too leery on motion controls. Probably because we've seen them crowbarred into a lot of places that they just don't belong. Like, I was really excited for the first Red Steel, but the technology just wasn't there yet. It ended up being a bland but serviceable first-person shooter with some god-awful sword segments. Then, with the power of Wii Motion Plus, Ubisoft gave it another go with Red Steel 2, and good on them for going above and beyond. Out with the dime a dozen Yakuza setting, in with this unique Cowboy Japan love child world. The cel-shading graphics and the acoustic guitar-fueled soundtrack give this game a lot of personality. And not only do the sword controls work, they're super versatile! The katana is your main weapon this time around, firearms being more of a secondary attack option. And you learn more and more crazy maneuvers throughout the adventure, most of which have a plethora of combo options. Maybe you'll hit a snag with the gesture-based attacks every once in a while, and it's a tough game to play sitting down. But I'm an active guy, and I'll take any excuse to pretend I'm Samurai Jack. Motion controls have only gotten better since then, so Ubisoft, think you maybe want to take a crack at Red Steel 3? You know, if you can stop remaking the same sandbox game for a second. It probably wouldn't sell that well, but I'll play it. I usually favor the boxing-themed characters in fighting games, so a fighting game with all boxers is sure to... Oh, it's not a fighting game. Yeah, don't let the gloves fool you. Punch-Out is all rhythm and puzzle solving, and I love it to death. Mad respect to the Mike Tyson NES classic, but there's never been a better comeback than Little Mac's bout on the Wii. Though there is a lot of love for the original in this game. Sound effects, attack patterns, Doc Lewis's shameless Nintendo plugs.
Join the Nintendo fun. I mean Club Nintendo today, Mac.
But Von Kaiser and Bald Bull have never looked so good. Sure, the roster of opponents might seem light, but there's so much detail put into each bout, and these brutes are so expressive. Look at their faces right before you land a star punch. They know they're in for some pain. Mac's looking pretty good too. I love how he's more battered at the end depending on how well you played. And when you get him off the ropes and try one more time, that's hype as hell.
Oh, damn, dude. Oh, am I done? Oh no, dude. Ah! I'm doing Hulkamania!
Plus, you're actually getting twice the battles. Every baddie has a normal match and a super hard title defense match with new strategies and conditions. Even Glass Joe gets a little tough. You'll see that game over screen a lot, but you'll feel like Rocky when you finally get the timing down and see Sandman hit the mat. Pros will dig the NES-style button controls, but me, I grab the nunchuck and play this with full motion. Like I said, I'm an active gamer. Give it a try sometime, it's a rush. I can see why Nintendo hasn't come back to this one yet, it must have taken forever to make. But as long as I replay this baby, I'm happy. Never stop chasing your dreams, Mac. And never stop chasing that bike.
Good job, son. Good job.
Time for another fighting game, and I just checked. Nearly a fifth of my top 50 fits the category. Guess I shouldn't be surprised. Now, I usually like to keep my fighting down to 2 dimensions, but in my opinion, only 2 franchises ever really brought the genre gracefully into the Z-axis. Soul Calibur for weapon-based action, and for good old fisticuffs, Tekken. The series keeps getting better and better, with Tekken 7 continuing the trend with its over-the-top yet somehow down-to-earth fighting system. Great characters full of drama, a story mode that's actually really good, take notes Capcom, this is how it's done, and mechanics that just, so good! I tend to be more of an aggressive player, but I really appreciate Tekken's gameplay for rewarding good risks and punishing bad ones. There are combos to be had, but they're more careful and methodical, and you won't even see them in every round. It's perfectly acceptable to spend half the fight sneaking in quick jabs. With only 60 seconds on the clock, you don't have a lot of time to mess around. But if you get greedy, you might set up your opponent for some big hits. Health bars are short, And even if you get a bad start, victory is always just a few well-placed kicks away. Do not give up. I'm not the best when it comes to Tekken, but it's one of my favorites for watching pro matches. Do yourself a favor and look up the Rev Major 2017 finals between JDCR and me. This fight is crazy, down to the absolute wire, and only a game like Tekken 7 could facilitate a match this intense.
Oh, what's he gonna do? Oh! Goodness! No time! Oh my God!
Here's a 25 years of tight juggles and buff old men.
Oh, good block! There's no time left! Oh my God!
I'm surprised no more heroes didn't make it on here. Neither of them. But when I weigh the good and the bad, there's a bit too many Jasper Bats and Million Gunmen for my taste. On the other hand, Mad World, the other once Wii exclusive quirky gorefest, there's no part that really brings the experience below average. Except for the shamans. How the hell do you make werewolves so uncool? Way more on the positive end though, the Sin City art style looks awesome while hiding the Wii's graphical limitations, racking up points while racking up enemies never gets old, and Jack Kamen is a card-carrying badass. Mad World progresses through themed areas, from a racially insensitive Asian theme park to a haunted house zone, and even a space-age set of levels, and each comes with interesting bosses that stand up to the likes of Travis Touchdown's opponents, while fitting in with these strange themes. An imposing Yokozuna, a well-endowed vampire, these Jedi ripoffs, and how can you forget Von Twirlin' Killer? It all builds up to a satisfyingly stupid showdown with the Black Baron, who will pimp slap you into a new zip code if you're not careful. But of course, the real stars of the show are the original Wiz and Boomstick, Howard and Kreese. Announcers extraordinaire, it's their solemn mission to take the piss out of every second of gameplay.
You know what I don't get? I don't get why they call him Little Eddie when he's so fucking big.
I think it's supposed to be ironic.
What?
You know, the use of words to express something other than, and especially the opposite of, the literal meaning. Usually a humorous or sardonic literary style or form.
You got beat up in school a lot, didn't you?
It's a guilty pleasure to be sure, with immature humor out the wazoo. But that's kind of the point, right? You're trapped in an ultra-violent game show being produced for the lowest common denominator. You're supposed to be cynical of it, even if you're secretly enjoying all of the lowbrow jokes from the peanut gallery.
Okay, this round.
He didn't break any of my records.
I don't think he was going for the most time shitting your pants record.
A record is a record. I got a trophy and everything.
And the rumors about the illegal brand?
Lies! All lies!
Make sure your mom's not around to hear it, and have a great time.
Yeah. This is the kind of treat only the Bishop of Blood and Carnage, the Black Baron, stops him. To light up the night, all you got to do is toss a motherfucker into a tube. Then it's only a matter of time before that ass gets tapped and kabloom! Shit be flying. You think it's the 4th of July up in this motherfucker. God damn. Hey, come on, baby. No, you know I love you. Whoa. Hell no! Here goes my code.
I flip-flop a bit on fighting games. Some days I think we live in the best of times for the genre, but other days I'm nostalgic for the Dreamcast era, when Capcom ruled the ring with games like Clash of Heroes and Third Strike. Depends on the franchise, but I don't have to pick an era for Darkstalkers because Capcom refuses to make a new one of these! So, Darkstalkers 3 it is. The series that started this art style for Capcom fighters, Darkstalkers' offbeat aesthetic and ludicrous characters fill a certain niche while still being a solid competitive fighter. Sure, the cast of Tekken has a luchador and a bear, but here we have Rikuo the merman heartthrob, Xienko the double trouble Jiangshi, and Jontal Bane the werewolf with nunchucks! Outlandish? Sure. Wacky? Definitely. But what's even wackier is that I actually got really attached to some of these characters. I don't know what it is, but in these short cutscenes and the blurbs in the instruction manuals, I was able to get invested in their individual plights. Maybe because each of them are so hopeless. There's a happy ending here and there, but most of these characters go through great loss and don't come out of the arcade mode any better than they came in. Somewhere on the verge between legitimate drama and dark humor, Darkstalkers hits an interesting tonal dissonance that I'm totally down with, and it influenced the future of the genre in some great ways. How? Well, I'll get to that later, but for now, enjoy the solid mechanics and embrace the weird eccentric characters. It's a graveyard smash. It cannot be understated what a surprising smash Portal was. For what's essentially a piece of Half-Life bonus content, it stands on its own for innovative puzzle solving and inspired world building. If it has one flaw, it's that it leaves you wanting more, which is just about the best compliment you can give a game like this. That more was delivered in 2011 with the simply titled Portal 2. No clever subtitle, all that creative energy was saved for the game itself, expanding on the mind-bending puzzles with gels, tractor beams, and light bridges on top of the already perfect teleportation and momentum-based head-scratchers. For a puzzle game, it's the ideal balance. Any more complicated and it would have been off-putting, but it's just complex enough that you feel gratified for finding the solution on your own. The rooms never feel too obtuse or esoteric, because the rules of the game are taught and defined so well. And if you want some hilarious frustration, you can invite a friend along for some co-op, which is definitely worth the feeling of accomplishment if you have someone you know you can coordinate with. But it pales in comparison to the single-player story mode. Like with the gameplay, the story of Portal 2 uses the first game as a jumping-off point. GLaDOS reprises her role as the spiteful artificial antagonist, but now we get more exploration into her character, and the results are captivating, made better with the new arrivals of Wheatley and Cave Johnson. Altogether, this is some of the best writing I've ever seen in a video game. Seriously, ever. The dark humor, the timing, and the way it meshes with the gameplay, all of it is so wonderfully done.
Most test subjects do experience some cognitive deterioration after a few months in suspension. Now, you've been under for quite a lot longer, and it's not out of the question that you might have a very minor case of serious brain damage.
There was a time I would have called this one of the greatest games ever made, and while plenty of others have come along, my love for this series is still alive.
It's been fun. Don't come back.
Sometimes newer really is better. I've been with Mario Kart my whole life, and I have especially fond memories with the GameCube, DS, and Wii titles. But when a new game comes out with more content, unless it royally screws something up, it's going to basically eclipse the last entry. Which is how it goes with Mario Kart 8. Specifically, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because why not have a few extra characters in a better battle mode? Oh, and they went with a 2-item system? Yeah, definitely Deluxe. Though it'd be nice if I didn't have to pay full price for it. I already bought the Wii U version and all the DLC, so paying another $60 was a real blue shell to the nards. But anyway, Mario Kart 8 follows the same tried and true formula that's made Mario Kart the top racing game for 20 years. It's hectic, it's aggressive, there's a lot of skill involved, but enough chaos factors so that the better player doesn't automatically win every time. Mario Kart 8 did a lot to balance the unfair parts of the game, maybe a bit too much, but again, Deluxe rectified that later. The Super Horn is the counter item we've all been waiting for, that stupid lightning cloud is nowhere to be seen, no fake item boxes because nobody liked them anyway, and while I wish it wasn't on by default, I think the auto steering and auto acceleration is a great way to make sure that the game's accessible to everyone. You can say it's cheating, but you're not going to win anything higher than 50cc by relying on it. It's just there so that your baby cousin can finally play instead of screaming in the corner. Speaking of CCs, 200cc? Why the hell not? The tracks are not all designated for this much speed, but it's just so much crazy fun. And the tracks, both new and returning, are the real stars of Mario Kart 8. As the first HD outing for the series, Nintendo went nuts with the level of detail here, more than they had to. These backgrounds are fully rendered, even Mute City in Big Blue. I guess this is as close to a new F-Zero as you want to give us, Nintendo? Well, at least it's beautiful. In a world of crazy go-kart racers, there's certainly other contenders, but Mario is miles ahead of the pack. You want some cheese? Here's some cheese. Kid Icarus Uprising. Wasn't I talking about great writing a few entries ago? Universally, Portal 2 is going to appeal to more people, but I love this corny game, warts and all. We waited a long time to get a new Kid Icarus game, and glossing over the fact that the gameplay has changed, the graphics are different, and all of the characters have been completely reinvented, it's good to have it back. And now it's a Saturday morning cartoon. Not just in tone, though it nails that. The whole structure of the game is episodic, with mostly scripted dialogue sequences and big events. There's a story being told throughout with solid continuity, but sometimes the plot trails off into a self-contained arc. Medusa, the Chaos Kin, an alien invasion, seriously, where the hell did that come from? But it was never too much of a diversion for me. Every new chapter was another opportunity for these lovable characters to bounce off of each other.
Wait, is this? It is! A hot spring!
Apparently someone likes his spa time.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
You go in fully dressed? Don't you at least want to change into a swimming tunic or something?
Oh, no. The Angel's Code of Conduct says that we must always be ready for duty.
I guess you wouldn't be an angel if you didn't do things by the book.
Yeah. And I don't want to steam the sacred buns.
We're done talking about this.
Pit and Palutena have great banter, Veridi is an adorable tsundere, Dark Pit and Magnus want to be so serious, but the rest of the cast just won't let them be, and Hades, my literal god, Hades.
I've been so looking forward to your arrival, Pitty Pat.
Hades! Hades!
It's on!
All this and more if you can wrap your mind and your hands around the control scheme, which admittedly is riddled with poor choices. The on-rail segments are great, but things get real messy whenever Pit touches down. It's that and the hokey humor that's keeping me from recommending this game to everyone I meet, but personally, I got used to it. And you will too if you play it for more than an hour. Most of the boss battles are a real treat, the hundreds of weapons lend themselves to plenty of customizations, and Sakurai's toy box approach to bonus content means you can replay the missions again and again, and still feel rewarded for doing so. With all these great ideas and all these issues that can be improved upon, it's a wonder we don't have a sequel yet. Come on, Sakurai, get us a Switch follow-up! What's taking so long? Oh, right. Sorry, Sakurai, I didn't mean it. I love you, please don't be sad. Portal wasn't the only good thing to come out of the orange box. There's also this crowbar game, I don't know, something about headcrabs? And of course, Team Fortress 2. Talk about a sequel outdating the original. What even was Team Fortress Classic? I couldn't care less about those gritty online shooters like Call of Duty or Halo, but when I first discovered Team Fortress 2 through the Meet the Sniper video, I had to know what this was all about. Man, those videos were such good marketing. TF2's gameplay is based around its classes, which in other games would be variations on the same poorly shaven army dude. But here, not only does each class play completely differently, each class is his own character with personality and charm. While you try to achieve different objectives for your team, such as capturing a control point or stealing enemy intelligence, not only are these classes interacting with each other mechanically, they're interacting as characters. Ridiculous, stereotypical characters, but still characters. There's an intricate balance, and in a way disbalance to the classes, only deepened with all of the unlockable weapons and gear. The Heavy can mow down opponents, but a speedy scout or a rocket-jumping soldier can outmaneuver him, which won't matter if he has a medic that ubercharges him, but what if that medic is taken out by a spy? But what if that spy is sniffed out by a pyro? But nothing's getting past that engineer's turret, except this demo man who's bouncing grenades around the corner, but never mind because now everyone's respawning as Sniper. And even those strategies don't work every time. If you're good enough, you can overcome the inherent advantages one class might have over another. In other team-based online games, it can get real frustrating if your team's not working with you. Please somebody play Medic, we don't need any more NGs. But unlike those other online games, I don't get upset when it happens in Team Fortress 2. Everything is so silly, and there's not any kind of reward for playing well other than bragging rights. It's fine to just let a match devolve into shenanigans sometimes. Heck, the achievements encourage it! And that's what TF2 is, a semi-competitive series of shenanigans. Sure, it's got a weird fascination with hats, and sure, it pioneered new forms of microtransactions, but it's still going strong 10 years later, so it's gotta be doing something right.
Feelings? Look, mate, you know who has a lot of feelings? Blokes that bludgeon their wife to death with a golf trophy. Professionals have standards. Be polite. Be efficient. Have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Must have been unconscious for a while.
Sorry, last time I'll do that bit. I just really love that intro. I've talked about this game to death with how much it knocked my socks off. It's an amazing mystery game, up there with Capcom's other great whodunits. Ghost Trick is full of twists and turns until it hits a climax that, well, I certainly didn't see it coming. But for what, my 4th time talking about this, let's focus on how it excels as a puzzle game. Every room you enter is a new conundrum, with you trying to prevent a murder while being basically intangible. Moving your character in this game is unlike any other game I've played. You have to manipulate the environment poltergeist style and hop across different objects to inhabit. All the while, you're trying to influence people who don't even know you're there, knocking things over, making noises, anything to get them to just look in the right direction. There's a cause and effect to all of your actions, and by turning back time, you slowly master your limited ability to affect the world around you. Every room is a Rube Goldberg machine just waiting to spring, in a few cases literally. And it's amazing how integrated it all feels. The story's a little farcical, but the puzzle elements sitting around never felt contrived to me. I actually believe that the objects in the room just happen to be this way. Let's compare to a runner-up for this countdown, 999. It also has a great mystery story and engaging puzzles, though it's clear that the puzzles are put there for you to solve. To be fair, that's how 999's story works, and it works well. It's a Saw kind of situation, and solving the puzzles rewards you with more engaging story with great characters. But in Ghost Trick, the puzzles are the characters, and the story is the puzzle. You're not just working out a riddle, you're moving through an event. You're mechanically interacting with pieces of the mystery, and it feels to me like I'm saving people, not just moving my character to where they can save people. I don't know, it's a weird comparison, but like I said, I've covered this game a lot, and I'm running out of ways to praise it. I assure you though, Ghost Trick deserves the attention. I might be an easy guy to impress, because lately every game I play, I pretty much love. In fact, after I started writing this script, I had to stop to add 4 different games to the list. The first of those games, Octopath Traveler. Square Enix owns 3 of the biggest names in RPGs, but we shouldn't overlook when they make a weird standalone title from time to time. The World Ends With You, Parasite Eve, Bravely... Default? Well, the results are always interesting at least, and Octopath Traveler is no exception. It feels almost like a writing experiment the dev team conducted that just happened to become a competent RPG. 8 characters, 8 stories. And I mean 8 separate stories. They don't connect in any way, at least not until the end in a difficult-to-unlock final scenario. The heroes travel together and have occasional banter, but for the most part things are segregated. So it's a good thing that all 8 of the stories are really good. Some more than others, remember I made a countdown about it, and there isn't a single character I'd say I dislike, both in personality and in battle. Olbrich is an old, jaded bodyguard and hits like a truck. Cyrus is the brilliant but socially inept professor with killer elemental coverage. Primrose has a dark past and sick dance moves. The list goes on. All the tales are small in scope for the majority of the journey, but the personal stakes involved are palpable, and at times it achieves some nice moral ambiguity. Feels a lot like a set of Dungeons & Dragons sessions actually, and I think that's the main reason I like it, because I love D&D. There's some level grinding involved if you want to see the whole game, but it utilizes a rather robust battle system, incorporating aspects of Bravely Default and even a weakness system similar to Persona 5. And I'm all about the HD pixel aesthetic. It looks weird at points, and the bloom is out of control, but it feels like I'm looking at a 16-bit pop-up book, and I love that. Maybe in a year or so I'll have calmed down and the game will slink down below my top 50, but for now, Octopath Traveler has me staggered.
You should have studied harder.
Before Coco, before the Book of Life, before El Tigre, there was Grim Fandango. This feels like one of the weirder choices on this list, doesn't it? Among all these recent franchise titles and nostalgia-pandering indie games, this 1998 cult point-and-click adventure is pretty unassuming. But even without the flash of other games, there's something about Grim Fandango I keep coming back to. Probably that it combines 2 of my favorite motifs, crime noir and Hispanic mythology. Manny Calavera, in particular, is one of my favorite characters of all time. He's just so suave, so charming. He's often lying through his teeth, but you still love him. He's flawed, but as he learns to care about Mecha and the fate of the land of the dead, it just gets to me. The gameplay is slow-paced, and like anything in this genre, sometimes the solutions to your problems are a little abstract. What elevates it above Sam and Max or Monkey Island for me is how many of the puzzles revolve around the characters and their circumstances, not just combining every two objects together until something works. This is especially true in the second chapter, where you explore a casino and manipulate people into getting you a seat on a ship, get a sailor fired, cure your friend's gambling addiction, flirt your way through a metal detector check. Even if you get stuck, which you will, it's still just interesting to meet people and see what they have to say. The art style refuses to age. It's awkward and stiff, and that's what I love about it. They're not just supposed to be skeletons, they're supposed to look like papier-mâché Dia de los Muertos decorations. And the lack of expressions adds to Manny's bone-dry line delivery.
Ever cheated on your husband?
Mr. Calavera, there's no ring on my finger.
There's no skin on it either.
I guess you'll just have to trust me then.
If you've seen my top 10 skeletons countdown, you already know that the plot of this game means a lot to me. Probably more than it should, but that's just how I am. I overanalyze things, and this game is obviously working with some social satire. If you have the patience or are okay with using a guide, give it a go. Just, por favor, get the remastered version and avoid the tank controls. I wouldn't wish those on anyone.
Bye, Carla.
Drop dead!
My favorite Tales game? Oh, you guys are killing me! Well, first let's talk about why it makes the list. Tales of Blank is the pinnacle when it comes to making a JRPG look like an anime. The games tell great stories rooted in fantasy tropes, while also deconstructing them to make interesting plots about complex, world-affecting decisions, starring lovable characters with great visual designs and memorable three-dimensional personalities. Endless conversation options let you dig as deep as you could possibly want into the inner thoughts of these heroes. The gameplay is right up my alley, an RPG that plays like a fighting game, complete with combos to learn and powerful mystic arts to unleash. Whichever game you pick, chances are it's a good one. As for my favorite, well, I had Xillia on this list for a while, but then I changed my mind in March, which might have annoyed my co-writer a little bit, but in my defense, Xillia was only just a hair above Vesperia for me. And that was before the definitive edition, which is so good. Like Xillia, every character in Vesperia is an absolute gift. Bookworm Rita, Princess Out of Water Estelle, Team Dad Raven, Yuri's the guy you wish you could be, Carol's the guy you actually are, Judith is all the Lord of the Rings elf tropes done right, and Rapide is a dog smoking a pipe. He's way too cool to be here. All of them are fully realized and explored, and all of them are really fun to play. I could say the same about Xillia, that's another perfect cast right there. But especially with the definitive edition, we just have more perfection in Vesperia, adding in good guy Flynn and Patty who, having only experienced her story recently, actually made me cry. The combat is really top-notch in both games, but lately I've been leaning towards Vesperia's system. It's more strict with the art strings, but that just makes it more rewarding for me to pull off a 200-hit wombo combo. And getting skills through equipment makes me care a lot more about making money and upgrading existing weapons. Part of what had me picking Xillia for so long was my playthrough with Comic on his channel. We got really into the game's theming, and Xillia definitely had the strongest villain, but Vesperia has so many great players like Nan, Gaussian Draught, Jaeger, Zagi. I was never left wanting for a good adversary. When it comes down to it, my favorite Tales game tends to be whichever game I played most recently. And that's a sign of a great series right there. Playing any of them makes me happy.
We may be a small guild now,
But we'll make it big.
We are brave Vesperia. Smooth sailing.
I'm not too grounded in nostalgia, am I? I mean, most of the games I've listed so far are from the last 10 years. But this is my list, and games I grew up on hold some power here. I was usually a Nintendo kid, but I'd occasionally venture out into the strange land of Sony and spend some time with a certain Bandicoot. I could just put the whole Insane Trilogy on here, which is a great remaster, but that doesn't do justice to the hours I spent toiling away with Crash Bandicoot Warped. Are we all agreed that this was the best out of the three? I also think it's the only game that the Insane Trilogy doesn't do 100% better, if only because the original had better control in some vehicle sections. And the introduction of Uka Uka, he looks so much more menacing on the PS1. But I digress. Crash 1 creates a good platforming system, Crash 2 perfects it, and Warp takes that perfected system and spreads it across time and space. Prehistoric jungles, Egyptian tombs, the Great Wall of China, 1950s motorways. I'd say the sky's the limit, but you play up there too and continue right on into space. Every level has something unique about it, but it all feels like it belongs together somehow. The best parts are when you're simply platforming. If I can make a comparison here, let's talk about Mario, the platforming king. Mario had an excellent jump into 3D, partly by eschewing the linear levels of the 2D games in favor of open 3D playgrounds. Really lets you appreciate how well Lakitu's camera worked. Now, if I can be so bold, I don't think Naughty Dog was all that good at creating 3D space. In fact, if you look at the best games of the PS1, most of them are either menu-based RPGs or restrict you to 2D movement. Crash has 3D movement, but they weren't confident enough to make an all-access camera yet, so instead, they locked it in place and made the levels linear again. 3D, but linear. So in a weird way, Crash is more like a 3D Mario game than Mario was at the time. At least the way Mario games were pre-64. Just a weird thought I had. But none of this is bad. This approach locks you into the challenge and forces you to master the Bandicoot. There's no distractions, no way around it. It's just you and that tricky jump you can't quite make. Get good, Crash. With crazy locales, offbeat humor, and a memorable final bout with Cortex while avoiding the masked brothers' beam struggle, Crash 3 is a wild ride. The Insane Trilogy version is probably the way to go if you've never played it before, but I'll always look fondly on the days of my childhood, cutting my teeth on those low-poly platforms. Flying, inhaling, stealing powers. Is there anything Kirby can't do? Well, apparently he can't make a bad game. This glob of rose-colored Play-Doh has never let me down, but which of his adventures in Dreamland is my favorite? I would have to say his return to Dreamland. Star Allies definitely wins out in terms of graphics, combo potential, and content. Ugh, so much content! But there was something fresh about Return to Dreamland when it hit the Wii. What was originally slated to be a GameCube title, Return marks the debut of this new style of Kirby gameplay, which is a lot like the old style, just with polished 3D graphics, and a myriad of moves for each copy ability reminiscent of Superstar. Also like Superstar, Return can be played co-op, but instead of just hijacking an enemy, Kirby calls upon Dreamland's finest, King DDD, Meta Knight, and the surprisingly lethal Bandana D. He's so cute and so deadly. That's pretty much this series' thing, isn't it? Or you and your friends can all pick Kirby for the ability swapping we all know and love. Yeah, Star Allies has all this and more, but maybe too much more. The combo abilities are great and creative, but they totally clown on the game's difficulty. Yes, I'm actually complaining that a Kirby game is way too easy. Return's bosses aren't exactly kingpins either, but at least they last more than a few seconds outside of some super spicy boss rush. Again, Star Allies is great, I just prefer Return, even as a single player experience. It has far more levels for one thing. And both games have great music, but while Star Allies leans more on remixed classics, Return has that main theme and freaking Grape Garden. Oh man, I love that theme. Not to mention the best final boss theme in Kirby history, and one of the best final bosses. There's also a twist in the story that, yeah, I saw coming a mile away, but it's enough to give the adventure a little bit of texture. You're actually going to these levels for a reason, repairing an awesome starship, not just to get to the end. And you have moments like Landia, and again, that final boss. So good! Kirby Superstar, Crystal Shards, Triple Deluxe, Planet Robobot, they all have great endings, but Return wins out for letting you experience it with your buddies or on your lonesome. It's the best total package, a delightful game that can sate any platforming appetite. Maybe even Kirby's. I had some reservations when Street Fighter V was first announced. Ultra Street Fighter 4 was still pretty new, with the largest roster in the series to date. It seemed premature jumping to a new Roman numeral. I felt a little better once I started seeing some character reveals, new faces like Rashid, long-lost fighters like Kadin and Mika, the classics like Zangief looking better than ever before. And then the game launched, and oof. Kind of puts the bear in bare knuckle. A lot of features were missing, and the total number of fighters paled in comparison to its contemporaries. Capcom, it's not okay to release a game like this. Just saying. But 3 years and 3 sets of free updates later, I'm ready to call Street Fighter V a worthy successor to the legacy. As a fighting game aficionado, this series is really important to me. It's the franchise that started it all, invented the Hadouken, accidentally made combos, and while I love Third Strike for its stunning sprite-based graphics and smooth, fast-paced gameplay, 5 recently knocked it out of the ring. I can appreciate what they were going for with the smaller cast, first of all. Each character feels unique, with show-stopping critical arts, V-triggers that change the rules of the game in an instant, and tons of minute details that make the competitive scene for 5 really interesting to talk about. Fong brings in a new poison mechanic, Ibuki leans more into the whole ninja thing with way more kunai attacks, Cammy's spiral-arrowing all over the place, and there's this guy who keeps aging and de-aging. I don't know what that's about, but I like it. Finally, we could download new fighters instead of buying a whole new freaking game every time they add content. Seriously, I thought Capcom would never let that go. Even the story mode, though nothing compared to Tekken 7, has enough novelty moments that I sheepishly enjoy about it. I don't really care about your dead friend Rashid, but Zangief just blocked a sword with his pecs. This crap is bananas. Street Fighter V's release was very mishandled, poorly timed, and more than a little manipulative when it came to our wallets, with the season mechanics constantly influencing you to buy more content. But when you get down to the punching and spin kicks, it doesn't get much better than this. Well, actually it does. I have way more fighting games to talk about, but for now, gotta love that Street Fighter. Video games, characters, emotional experiences. This reminds me of a puzzle I once heard. Professor Layton and my unwound feelings. If you guys have been watching me over the last few years, you know I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I get enthralled by stories very easily, and most of all, I get way too attached to fictional characters. Yet, as I played through the first 3 Professor Layton games, my empathy for this well-mannered Herschel Layton kind of snuck up on me. I could talk about the game itself. Each Layton game takes you through an offbeat setting where the brilliant and easily distracted pedagogue stops at every opportunity to share a riddle. The puzzles cover a wide berth of logical conundrums that keep the mind stimulated, and all the while you're closing in on an epiphany that can explain the unlikely happenings of this unlikely town. But, you know, great as the gameplay is, it has very little to do with why this game is ranked here. True, if the games weren't so good, I probably wouldn't have gotten so attached to Layton in the first place, but it's Layton himself that makes this series. What at first seems like a bland Sherlock ripoff takes on serious nuance over time. Not because of any kind of twist, but from just how sincere and polite he is. He's likable, jovial, familiar, even if the stories don't require him to grow as a character. That is, until Unwound Future. Perhaps the only time adding time travel made a universe better. After 2 games getting to know him, we hear the origin of the man beneath the hat, part of it anyway. We learn what drives him, and more importantly, what almost stops him. And, well, I cried. Few games have made me tear up, but in the closing moments of Unwound Future, I wept for this kind soul who would never hurt a fly, but despite all his intellect and charm, may never reclaim his lost love. And he loses his composure for the only time in the series, and he takes off his hat, and... I just can't with this. Call me a drama queen, but this game hit me right in the chest, dug itself a hole, and took up permanent residence. It's a meritorious puzzle game with a lot of brains, but it's the heart that makes it one of my favorites. I admittedly didn't play much of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy back in the day. I was way too busy with Mario and Sonic at the time. I later came back around to try them, and they hold up really well, especially Donkey Kong Country 2. But it's far from my favorite outing for Mr. Kong. Years later, with Rare gone, Nintendo would get more experimental with their flagship Gorilla, particularly with Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, a beautifully weird fusion of platforming and rhythm. If the Let's Play didn't give it away, I'm a huge fan. But if I really search my feelings, it's not my favorite either. It's close, but if I were to pop in a DK game right now, it would be Donkey Kong Country Returns. Talk about a comeback. Retro Studios takes DK to his Super Nintendo roots while still doing things their own way, and it's the best of both worlds. If you've never played a country game before, here's how I'd explain it. You know how Mario games are good because the controls are really tight? Well, Donkey Kong is really smooth. DK feels like he has some real weight to him, fitting given his species, but with a little momentum, you'll be barreling through levels and leveling through barrels. The somersault is back, including DK's inexplicable ability to jump out of a roll mid-air, plus a new emphasis on gripping onto climbable surfaces. While the old games had good level design, Return feels more free to ape the design choices from the Rare era and iterate on them, making them smoother and punching up the action. Each stage is beautiful and unique. This game gets hard, but it's so inventive without ever straying too far from the core gameplay. Occasionally we mix things up with minecarts or the rocket, but they're the same level of quality. There were times where the action got so intense and so inventive, I actually burst out laughing in appreciation of it. The Country Trilogy's atmosphere also remains intact, remixing some of David Wise's classic tracks and adding some great new songs that are criminally underrated. Music's big for me, which is why I almost went with Jungle Beat, but a single level sealed the deal for me, Sunset Shore. When I got to this level, I was hooked. The graphics changed to this silhouette motif accompanied by a smooth jazz rendition of the Jungle Japes theme. This game knows how to win my favor and how to keep me playing. There's so many hidden collectibles, but the way the menu organizes your findings and teases a secret final level, I'm really motivated to 100% this game. My only gripe, the co-op just doesn't work with this kind of game. Put Diddy on your back and never let him leave. This is a lone banana experience, and I'm just over the moon for it. I don't get as many chances to talk about them, but I love the spectacle-based hack-and-slash kind of games. You know, God of War, Asuras Wrath, I guess you could count Mad World and Red Steel too. Those games where it's not just if you kill the enemies, but how you kill them. And the subgenre was first introduced to me through Devil May Cry. I followed Dante from the very beginning and spent countless hours replaying missions to rack up more points and better ranks. Devil May Cry 1 is rough around the edges, but it's still a great time for me. And Devil May Cry 2... well, I don't know what happened there, and 3 blows the others out of the water with more balanced difficulty and the introduction of Virgil. 3 is probably the best, but I actually prefer Devil May Cry 4 for the shiny graphics and the completion of Dante's character arc. Well, in reality, Dante's character reached its peak in 3, so by the time he shows up in 4, he's all out of to give and is just a demon-slaying badass. First, we have to play as Nero, which I hated at first. I don't want to be this whiny little jerk. I want to play as that cocky, self-assured jerk. But Nero's gameplay really grew on me, especially thanks to the Devil Bringer, which lets him hookshot to his enemies or pull them towards him all Scorpion style. When I finally did get my hands on Dante, I almost missed playing as Nero. At least I'd miss it if Dante didn't control better than ever. All of his weapons and styles are here like in Devil May Cry 3, but now he can freely switch between them mid-combo? Yes, please! Nero serves a second purpose, having all the doubt and emotional baggage, freeing up Dante to just be a hilarious badass. It's a pretty good deal, and a great way to end the series. Oh wait! Yeah, Devil May Cry 5 is out now, and if the rules weren't a thing, it would easily reign supreme, but for now, 4 takes the cake. And with that, there's only one thing left to say.
Don't you dare say it, jackpot!
As an ongoing series, Street Fighter might be my favorite franchise when it comes to fighting games. But man, Ryu, you're old. What is this, 1991? How about we get some fresh blood in the genre? The great thing about Skullgirls, well, one great thing about Skullgirls, is the blend of the old and the new. Back in the days of Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat, designers didn't really know how to make fighting games. They kind of stumbled upon it. Remember, the whole concept of chaining attacks together was the result of a glitch. But now, the kids who grew up loving these games are old enough to design them, and they're putting all that love back into the product, armed with the better knowledge afforded to them by years of R&D. A mostly all-girl cast with bizarre, at times grotesque powers. There's a cat girl who can take off her head, another lady with a killer umbrella, high-concept fighters like Peacock, Big Band, or Valentine, and Double, which looks like a dream I had after I ate a whole Chipotle burrito with queso and guac before going to bed. Every frame of every character is hand-drawn. It's beautiful and fresh, but peel back the skin and you'll see the strong sinews of the 90s fighting games it's built upon. Particularly Marvel, Third Strike, and Darkstalkers. The combo game is hectic as always, but the vibrant animation makes it a feast for the eyes, and you can play with up to 3 characters on your team, and if you and your opponent don't have the same amount of fighters, the game will balance out your health bars accordingly. Plus, there's all these references and quotes from other fighting games. My personal favorite is when they released a palette swap character named Fukuwa to mock Street Fighter IV's Decapre. That was awesome. Everything has this 30s film theming to it. Not just peacocking or crazy cartoon attacks, but the music, the HUD, and the announcer. And I really like how it handled the female cast. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of fan service, and I mean a lot of fan service. Seriously, look at this. I'm admittedly not gonna complain too much about that, but then the DLC added a couple of dudes in there, and it wasn't really a big deal. It's just like, hey, all of these characters are awesome. The gender ratio doesn't matter. We just care about how much ass they can kick. And it turns out it's a lot of ass. Credit to these guys for making such a great game on such a low budget, and I'm looking forward to more.
Thanks.
All right, show's over.
Every one of us from the old Countdown days has those games that we're associated with. Rabbit Luigi has Metal Gear, Zelda, and Spec Ops The Line. Quarter Guy has Mega Man and Arcana Heart. Josh has Dynasty Warriors and My Little Pony. Not a game, but that's what he has. And I became the guy who was always the one to bring up League of Legends. So I guess I better uphold my reputation. Most online multiplayer games I play are one-on-one, i.e. fighting games. You're not gonna catch me in a battle royale anytime soon. But there's something I love about the teamwork in multiplayer online battle arenas. Planning out the perfect 5-man team, taking lane as a late game carry alongside your support, or going solo top knowing that the jungler has your back. TF2 can have coordination like this, splitting up for targets, how the NG places his teleporters, and of course the medic. But it's mostly everyone doing their own thing. Here, you have 5 teammates with various spells and skills, timing them to turn the tides of a team fight and push ahead to the next tower. Finding combinations is a joy, like having Blitzcrank pull an opponent into your AoE ultimate, knocking a target skyward so that Yasuo can airstrike them, Soraka popping that global heal at just the right time, or diving in front of Caitlyn's sniper shot to defend your squishy mage while they flee. Every match has a dozen of these game-sharing moments that gives a rush I just can't find anywhere else. Of course, there's the inevitable toxicity that comes from this level of play, which is why I don't play ranked anymore. But League has a few features that at least try to mitigate it. It doesn't have the creep deny like Defense of the Ancient has, for one thing. I don't know about you guys, but I've always hated that. I'm not saying League's the best MOBA out there, but it's the best for me, thanks to my favorite feature, the lore. I know the plot doesn't matter in a game like this. Any MOBA would just write a flavored paragraph for each character and call it a day. But over the years, Riot's built this massive universe around its 100+ champions, multiple city-states, factions, and within those states, alliances, relationships, and backstories. All of this informs the personalities of these champions. It's the same kind of characterization that endeared me to TF2. When I pick Lee Sin, I'm not just playing a no-mana assassin with an approach, an AoE, and a knockback. I'm also playing as the humble monk, disgraced from the school of magic for reaching too far, who immolated himself in penance, and lost his sight for what he believes in. He fights for Ionia. That puts him at odds with champions like Katarina or Swain. Oh, and the other team has Udyr, Lee Sin's pupil. That's interesting! Is any of this still canon?
Nope.
Yeah, Riot started updating the lore and rewriting a lot of the continuity I'd grown attached to. Not too happy about that, but to be fair, the new stuff they add is pretty darn cool too. So, League characters show up in my countdowns a lot, of course they do. There's a character for every occasion, and they're usually really interesting. If I ever want to do a top 10 Minotaurs, top 10 Fencers, or top 10 versions of Sun Wukong, I know where I can find at least one entry. It's been almost a decade since I started playing League of Legends, and I still play it on a regular basis today. And I cannot deny how much this game affected me on how I view storytelling. GG, League of Legends. Well played. Now that we got that out of the way, it's time to finally talk about my favorite fighting game. We've parried, we've Hadoukened, and we've taken you for a ride, but now, we Ultra Combo. Killer Instinct 2015. Talk about loving a game's cast. KI may not have 150 characters like League, because that would be stupid, but it's like the roster was populated by everything a 10-year-old thinks is cool. Can we have a pirate? How about a ninja? Oh, and a dinosaur, werewolf, vampire, alien, a hot chick, a hot dude, a Viking, cyborg, robot, and that girl from The Ring? Things got really crazy in Season 3. Characters from Halo, Gears of War, and Battletoads somehow found their way in, and it's awesome! A lot of these got carried over from the original Killer Instinct, and while the first game was an awesome arcade fighter, I always got the feeling that it was amazing by accident. Like, the developers didn't really know what they were doing, but got lucky? As a fighting game, it's rough around the edges, but it has its own self-indulgent style, and you gotta love that voice yelling, Ultra Combo! The 2015 reboot came in at a time when fighting games were going strong, but really needed a fresh perspective. Street Fighter 4 was kinda slow and footsie, and Marvel 3 was rock attack, as I mentioned earlier. Killer Instinct 2015, to my shock and amusement, is one of the smartest designed fighters I've ever seen, implementing a combo system about more than just how much damage you can do. When you chain attacks, there's a meter that fills up until your opponent spins out of your combo, meaning you can't just stun lock them into infinity. It's up to you to put a finisher in your combo before you drop it. Do you choose the finisher that does more damage, the one that gets you more meter for your specials, or the one that repositions them for another potential combo? Decide quickly, because not only does chaining require really quick input, your opponent can initiate a combo breaker by correctly guessing if you're going to punch light, medium, or heavy in your next string. That means besides thinking about your placement and correctly hitting the buttons, you have a Rochambeau mind game going with your foe mid-combo. And if you're on the receiving end, you're not completely helpless if you walk into a Jago sword spree. Character models are big, time is short, and everything is screaming go, go, go. This is a very aggressive fighting game. There's tons of rushdown characters, and even the zoners are extremely offensive. You can't be a wallflower in this game, you're in it to win it. That might explain why Aghanos is so low tier, but goodness gracious, he is fun to play. Finish it off with a string of rhythmic hits, which the soundtrack actually harmonizes with? Yeah, the sound direction in this game is on point. If I were good enough to go to EVO, this is the game I'd be playing. Give me Saberwolf and watch me go to town.
Supreme victory!
Uh-oh. Hyrule Warriors. This could be an issue. I love this game, but I don't want to count it as my Zelda entry. I recall Josh Scorcher having a similar conundrum during his top 50, only in his case, he's also a huge Dynasty Warriors fan, and ended up counting Hyrule Warriors as neither a Zelda nor a Dynasty entry. I think I'm gonna do the same thing, though in my case, my favorite Dynasty Warriors didn't crack the top 50. I like Koei's one-man army simulators a lot, but with so many similar entries, all of these ancient Chinese brouhahas kind of run together for me. Here in Hyrule, you get the same overpowered gameplay, plus it shamelessly panders to my inner Zelda fanboy. Seriously, not even Nintendo themselves would reach for some of these references. Link can finally use the strength of the Golden Gauntlets offensively, Ruto gets carried into battle like in Jabu Jabu's belly, and oh my god, Darunia does the dance! And that's just the Ocarina of Time stuff. The original release on the Wii U stuck mostly to Ocarina, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, and I'd say that was enough for a full game. But if you're gonna check it out, go for the Definitive Edition on the Switch, which collects everything from the DLC of the original and the 3DS version. Toon Link can summon the train from Spirit Tracks, Marin from Link's Awakening shows up, the King of Hyrule turns into a boat and runs people over. Goodness, I love this franchise! And you know who else loves this franchise? Sia, the game's main villain. While little more than an excuse plot, the Legend mode is enough of an excuse to get into some missions, try a bunch of different characters, and see some interesting, if extremely dumb, plot turns. I love how Sia is basically just a fangirl gone mad with power, and the other new characters like Volga fit right into this non-canon, over-the-top version of Hyrule. The controls are simple enough that you can pick up any character and go on a power trip, but there's enough diversity in each warrior that you'll probably find yourself a few favorites. Impa with the Naginata, please! And if Legends isn't enough for you, hop into this game's 9 adventure maps! You'll never need another game again. You're kind of grinding missions at this point, which a lot of people won't really care for, but for me, the tiny awards you get along the way, from weapons and costumes to crafting items and experience points, it got me hooked. Hard. I'd still be working on it if I didn't get distracted by other games, and every now and then I'll pop it back in and make some progress towards that unfathomable 100% completion. The Legend of Zelda is my favorite franchise of all time, so we'll be seeing it again on this list, but for celebrating a series so dear to me with some rocking tunes and mook-annihilating gameplay, I tip my green cap to Hyrule Warriors. It's not dangerous to go alone. Just keep hitting X. Don't worry, loves. The cavalry's here. It might surprise some of you that I like Overwatch more than League of Legends or Team Fortress 2, given my track record. But guys, if this game came out back during those years when I was churning out countdowns every few weeks, Overwatch would be all over this channel. I think part of why I like Overwatch so much is that it's really a blend of those two games, a TF2 style shooter by way of League of Legends. Do I have to explain? Well, I'm going to anyways. You have your objective-based battlegrounds, with you defending a point or pushing a cart, and it's a cel-shaded first-person shooter with a cartoon style not unlike TF2. The animated trailers that come out regularly even remind me of the Meet the videos, but the way the characters are handled, having a set of abilities and an ultimate, a detailed backstory and relationships with select other characters, releasing a new one every once in a while, it's very League. Or any MOBA, I suppose, but not since League have I fallen in love with a universe so quickly. At least a universe that has so little to do with the actual gameplay. Like League, all the lore about Omnix and the return of an international super team, it doesn't actually come into play in the matches. You can go ahead and put Overwatch member Genji on a team with his estranged brother, 3 villainous Talon members, and a hamster. He won't have any complaints. But the lore gives context to the characters and makes me enjoy stepping into their shoes. Again, not every game can have 150 characters like League, but it's amazing how many different playstyles this cast gives you. Soldier 76 plays like a Call of Duty pro, while Pharah rocket jumps like the TF2 Soldier. Reaper is like playing the Darkness. Lucio parkours all Mirror's Edge-like to get to friends he can buff. You got your healers, you got your snipers, a ton of characters who put up shields, and D.Va throwing her entire mech suit at people. I'll admit that, like League of Legends, it's easy to find some unhappy campers in the annals of Team Builder, so try to play with friends if you can. But for the most part, I love this community, which is what earns Overwatch so high a station on my list. It's like Blizzard crystallized fandom culture, sifted out the bad stuff, and engineered a bunch of characters you're guaranteed to fall in love with. This game got big around the same time I started regularly cosplaying at conventions, and I've even cosplayed Reaper at a pool party once. And my time with these fellow Overwatchers is something I wouldn't trade for the world. It's one of those games that continues improving my life, even when I'm not playing it. Even if half of it is done by the fans, it wouldn't be possible without the game itself. Then again, it did help start the loot box craze. I'm not letting that slide, Blizzard. Just because you're not as bad as other people doesn't make it okay. Though we have recently come to realize that Blizzard is, in fact, as bad as others, if not worse. Not gonna get into that here, we're all aware of the situation. I still love Overwatch despite that, but I'm also totally calling out Blizzard for their bullshit. Anyway, next entry. If you can remember 17 entries ago, we talked about Mario Kart 8, but that's not the last you'll see of Mario. Yeah, one per franchise, but Mario is such a mega franchise that I thought it'd be fair to break it down into a few subcategories. There's the party and sports games, though Mario Strikers Charge didn't quite make the list. The kart series is mentioned. There's the core platforming series, we'll get to that later. But what about the RPGs? Mad props to the Mario & Luigi series, but this was an easy win for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. I was in the middle of school when this one came out, and I can remember that I was so engrossed with the story that I would try to finish my homework in class so that I could have more time to play this at home. It took me months, since I would get so sidetracked talking to all the colorful NPCs, collecting all the badges, completing all the side quests from the wanted board, and exploring the vibrant papercraft lands around Rogueport. Now, I really like games like Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story, but the narratives of the Mario RPGs haven't been able to hook me lately like they did back with the first 3 Paper Marios. Is it because I'm older now and harder to impress? I don't think so. A good number of my top 50 games came out within the past few years. But Thousand Year Door wasn't content with telling the standard Mario saves Peach story, a trope that the new Paper Marios have vexingly fallen back on. Yeah, Mario still has to save Peach, this time from an alien syndicate called the X-Nauts, and he has to do so by collecting MacGuffins over the course of 8 chapters. But this isn't your basic fare of grasslands, desert, ice world, forest, beach, mountain, etc. Chapter 1 has you slaying a dragon in an abandoned castle. Chapter 2 sees you amassing an army of mites in a giant tree kingdom. Chapter 3 is about Mario entering a pro wrestling league in an arena above the clouds. Each chapter throws a new curveball. Not to put Thousand Year Door on a pedestal, it's far from perfect. Chapters 4 and 5, when you break them down, consist mostly of walking back and forth down a long straight path. But even then, there's mix-ups like the fake ending in Chapter 4, this awesome battle with Cortez the Pirate King, and, you know, I think that's the real difference from these sticker-based sequels. Thousand Year Door's combat is actually fun. I didn't mind running back and forth because the base game mechanics had some actual lasting appeal. No one-use items for basic attacks, just simple commands with fun QuickTime events to keep things lively, different fourth-wall-breaking environmental effects, and partners! Why in the 7 Kingdoms did they stop putting partners in this series? I don't want to hate on the new stuff, I know a lot of this is my nostalgia talking, but not only is Thousand Year Door the most fun to me, its story meant something. It stuck with me. And before anyone asks, so did Super Paper Mario, that game's great too. But Thousand Year Door has that train chapter, so it wins. Humor, creativity, strategy, and catchy as hell battle music, Thousand Year Door is a masterpiece. So long as we're talking about last decade RPGs, moons give me strength. I don't think I have to explain my love for Skies of Arcadia to you. It's well documented on a Let's Play that I did with ComicFoil on his channel that you should totally check out. If I had to give the elevator pitch, how would I describe how good this game is? Well, it's so good it managed to escape the sinking Dreamcast and start a new life with a superior GameCube port. Seriously, if you're gonna check this out, get Skies of Arcadia Legends on the GameCube. It's so much better. Skies of Arcadia is a grand JRPG adventure played straight. It's not really trying to subvert anything, it's not a deconstruction the way the Tales games are. It just wants to be the best version of what it is. No tricks, no gimmicks. Not to say there's nothing new or different here, Arcadia is a destroyed world now made up of various islands floating in an endless sky. It's a pirate adventure, and both the storytellers and the main characters have a sincere fondness for the swashbuckling lifestyle that's infectious to the player. Look at these faces. Even with the graphical limitations of the time, it's impossible not to grow attached to these characters. Your enemy, the evil Valuan Empire, has 6 admirals that bring variety to your missions while covering all the best villain tropes. The turn-based battles are simple on the surface, but open up in complexity when you consider colored weaknesses and resistances, status effects, and each character's various super moves. The GameCube version adds a boatload of new bosses that require a galvanized strategy to overcome, and the character designs for these bosses are just so cool! I want an HD remake of this game so badly! Though, I really do love how indescribably Dreamcast this game feels even with the port, from the memorable synthy music to the heavy use of shadow and colored lighting. It's right on the border of low poly and legitimately breathtaking. Some characters do look better than others, but you know. Most importantly, this game nails the rush of exploration more than most JRPGs. Each country you visit is unique and rich with culture, Vice constantly discovers new things about the planet, and there's tons to collect from moonfish to moonberries, chams to crew members, natural landmarks and unnatural creatures, and this edge lady with a scythe who won't leave me alone! If you can stand a slower paced epic and a higher than average encounter rate, you need to dig up this lost treasure. Captain's orders. Speaking of Sega, isn't it about time we heard from our favorite blue laughingstock? Maybe there's no place for hedgehogs here. Haven't you heard? Sonic was never good. We realized that in 2006. Listen, haters, I know there's a lot to make fun regarding Mr. the Hedgehog here. I won't deny that every game, even the good ones, are plagued with baffling design choices. But Sonic's always been an important part of my life ever since Sonic the Hedgehog 2, my very first video game. My thumbs were grown around the practice of well-timed spin dashes and tricky jumps. Call me nostalgic, but the original Sonic trilogy is about as good as it gets. At least, that's what Christian Whitehead thought before deciding, you know what? I can do better. Sonic Mania. Proof that dreams do come true. After such a long road, man, the fans really needed this one. Not that I have a problem with 3D Sonic, these games all have their quirks, but I genuinely like Unleashed, Generations is good, Colors is great. When Sega has their act together, they can make some great levels, but how fitting is it that after 20 years of varying quality, the best move Sonic Team made was letting some fan develop a game for them? The developers of Mania just get it. I knew I was in good hands from watching the intro cinematic. This music, these facial expressions. This is what Sonic is all about. I don't even care about the 10th appearance of Green Hill Zone. Every level brought back for Mania starts as a nostalgic recreation of the original, for Act 1 at least, before spinning things around with brilliant new mechanics for Act 2. And the new stages are so well constructed. Stardust Saloon feels right at home with old goodies like Chemical Plant and Oil Ocean, and do I need to mention Studiopolis? It's a celebration, even more so than Generations, saluting the good and the bad of Sonic's early years, but thanks to a modern understanding of game design, all of it is good. When that second boss fight devolved into Mean Bean Machine, I just about lost it. It's catering to the fans, sure, but I don't think newcomers will mind in a game that plays so well. Knuckles and Tails are great, and Sonic's got the drop dash now, which finally gives us a reason to pick him besides completion. He's the speedrunner's pick. At least he was until Ray was added and his game-breaking glide ability. But how can I be mad at that face? Throw in the varied boss battles, kicking music, and bonus stages that don't make me want to kill myself. It's not just nostalgic. It's good. And it reminds me why I stuck with Sonic the Hedgehog for so long.
We're not slowing down anymore. As long as your hands in mine, we'll conquer any roadblock. The fast lane will rock, that's right. 'Cause I've got my friends right by my side.
With Sonic out of the way, it's all uphill from here. Celeste. That was a stupid joke from Comic, but since he's the one who introduced me to this game, I'll let it slide. Not sure if I would have picked this one up otherwise. Judging a book by its cover, I got the usual indie vibe from it, you know? Retro-style platformer, can't walk out of my front door without seeing a few of those. But in the case of Celeste, playing is believing. You need to feel this one to know how good it is. You feel the shoes of Madeline, a girl with a simple goal. Climb Mount Celeste. The story gets a little deeper than that, but not by much. There's just enough strong dialogue and mystical mountain magic to give the narrative some meat, but its true purpose is to service the gameplay and the theme of the game. Challenge. You get 3 moves: jump, climb, and dash, and from there, it's all up to you. No tricks, no workarounds, you either get through the obstacles or you don't. And at first, some of these rooms are going to seem impossible. But stick with it, and you're in for the most perfect difficulty curve I have ever experienced. You learn from doing, and the difficulty always seems to be just above your skill level, within reach if you just stretch your comfort zone a bit. In that way, it's a lot like Super Meat Boy, but way nicer. Everything from the quick respawns to the encouraging messages on the loading screens are there to inspire you to keep trying. And that ties back into the story. Madeline's not here to save the world or stop a bad guy. She's just trying to see if she can overcome something legitimately challenging. The game explores themes of anxiety and crippling self-doubt, but it doesn't just show a character get past it. It tasks you to break through these barriers and beat the level. There's a part towards the end that really resonated with me. Madeline reaches her personal epiphany and learns something about herself, her arc is complete, and another character tells her, hey, good luck trying to get to the top, but if you want to stop now, that's okay too, as long as it's your choice. And that was so odd to me. Never before have I heard a game tell me it's okay if I can't beat it. I've had plenty of games offer me easy modes or power-ups to boost me over the finish line, but never one that just said, hey, you do you, have fun, we're cool. Kind of an antidote to the whole get good trend. This game has the grit to claim that only those worthy can beat it, but the grace to admit it's okay if you're not interested. That's awesome! But I love a challenge, and giving up was not an option for me. I cracked my knuckles and got to the top of that mountain. I proceeded to beat the extra level, all of the B-sides, and all of the C-sides. And it was freaking hard, and it was freaking good! After trudging through some of the greatest platforming experiences I've ever had and searching for the hidden hearts in each level, I was amazed how easily I was zipping through sections that kicked my butt the first time around. And I smiled because I knew that was all me. This game is a masterpiece in design and meta-narrative, and a must-play for anyone serious about platformers. I'd even go so far as to call it the pinnacle of platformers. So after that eulogy, you might think that Celeste is my favorite indie game. More like fourth? But it's a mere insect compared to my most recent discovery, Hollow Knight. Yeah, like Octopath Traveler, I had to stop writing this script to add it on, and this time I have Patty to thank for it. But you should know that already, right? We kinda have a big Let's Play on my channel about it. It's one of those few occasions where I first experience a game through Let's Playing, and you know what? Every time Patty and I are finished for the night, I get a little sad. I just can't wait to get further in this game every time. It's got the Dark Souls style of storytelling, and I know we're all sick and tired of things getting compared to Dark Souls. Crash Bandicoot is Dark Souls, Cuphead is Dark Souls, he, she, me, Dark Souls. But of all the games I played outside From Software, Hollow Knight is the most worthy of that title. It's 2D Dark Souls, not only for the gloomy atmosphere, the deep story told largely through scenic details and item descriptions, and the general difficulty, but how it handles that difficulty. Enemies have patterns and behaviors, you can learn them, and you will, but the game's never going to ease up on the gas. Take the Mantis Lords for instance. You fight this really tough opponent, her attacks are big and swift, but through determination you finally learn the pattern and defeat her. Your reward? Fighting two more simultaneously. Yeah, it's kind of a big middle finger to your accomplishment, plus the lords are on a slight delay from each other which can really trip you up. But you've been prepared for this challenge. You mastered the pattern, now just master the double pattern. It's a learning environment all throughout the entire game. You'll just be learning through failure most of the time. Comparisons aside, I actually prefer Hollow Knight to the Souls series. Despite the grimness, the characters are strangely adorable. Look at the little knight and his big blank eyes, he's so cute! And the 2D plane plays more to my platforming and fighting game roots. It's also a darn good Metroidvania. I finished the game by now and have also done a second and third playthrough, and at this point, I'm just waiting for Silksong to come out. My favorite Pokemon game? Actually, this one's pretty easy. Pokemon burst into the scene right when my classmates and I were impressionable elementary school kids. But for some reason, I wasn't on that bandwagon. I didn't hate Pokemon or anything, I'd watch the show, look at all my friends' holographic collections, but my parents weren't about to let me waste money on collecting 150 of anything. And the Game Boy games that started it all never found their way into my collection. I appreciated the series from afar for 10 years, knowing the creatures mostly from appearances in Super Smash Bros. But feeling nostalgic for earlier seasons of the anime, I took a chance on the Generation 2 remakes of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And it was then that I became a Pokemon fan. For the most part, the Pokemon series has gotten better and better with each installment, but there's something about the older titles that I just don't get from Kalos and Alola. There's more challenge and less hand-holding, more open-ended exploration and less railroading. But the mechanics of those Game Boy Color titles are broken as hell. So having the Johto adventure spiffed up with a full range of color, abilities, the physical special split, and all the innovations from generations 3 and 4 is the perfect blend of old and new. The plot isn't a page-turner, but I love the idea of fighting Team Rocket while they scramble around without Giovanni's leadership. Getting trainers' phone numbers for rematches, hearing about a temporary swarm of rare wild Pokemon, defeating the Johto champion only to discover an entire second league to take on, and Red, already the coolest part of Gold and Silver, only got more epic in the remake by adding a snowy mountain peak and crazy good music. Add in the compatibility with the Gen 3 and 4 Pokemon games, and you're set. Again, I love the newer games and everything they've improved, but none of them have even attempted the amount of post-game content as Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And I can't remember a time in this series where I've had more precious experiences traveling through the world of Pokemon. I could rip through hordes of enemies as a bionic Hindu god or a cocky half-demon all day long. But when it comes to the spectacle hack-and-slash genre, one Umbra Witch reigns supreme.
Let's dance, boys!
I love me some Bayonetta. Platinum Games took their penchant for pandemonium and truly forged a ludicrous universe, complete with a soundtrack of church choir and acid jazz, and one of the most lovable, bombastic protagonists of the last 10 years. She's powerful, she's gorgeous, she's killing everything in sight and loving every minute of it. And when you're having that much fun, why stop? Keep that combo meter running right into the second game. Bayonetta 2 does little to change the predecessor's formula, a point in its favor. You can jump right from one game to the other and expect the same tight controls and house-leveling super moves. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, but that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement. The first game's difficulty was a bit unruly, beating you senseless even on normal settings. That's curbed a bit here, so now you only get those insurmountable odds if you like torturing yourself, which I imagine some of this fanbase does. The different weapons are more distinct now, adding a rose whip and a sweet longbow to the collection of guns and blades. And the whole game just looks better. Like, I get what the first game was going for, it's demons and stuff, so you get a lot of black and red, but the eye-popping blues and more vibrant outdoor areas really captures a sense of magic, saving that Hellfire red for when you're actually in hell. I will admit, I cared a bit less about the story this time around. Now that Bayo's past is revealed, the conflict is more on this kid named Loki, but it's got some neat turns, including more Rodon.
Damn, woman, I thought I told you to chill.
And without spoiling anything, there's a cyclical nature to things that ties Bayonetta 1 and 2 together nicely. Also, short-haired Bayo is best Bayo. Then again, gotta say, seriously loving her look for the third game. So will Bayonetta 3 eclipse this game in the future? We'll just have to wait and see. The RPG genre is enormous, but I tend to break it down into two types, Eastern and Western. While JRPGs have a more prescribed linear plot that focuses on specifically written characters, Western RPGs are more interested in their world, letting you have more freedom and building your protagonist however you'd like, and follow the plot at your own pace. I'm a character person, so I tend to lean more towards JRPGs, but BioWare managed that sprawling Western experience without sacrificing the individuality of the characters. I've had a lot of fun with the original Mass Effect trilogy, but I've always preferred fantasy to sci-fi. Surprised? Nobody expects the Dragon Age Inquisition. Though it presented a beautiful world full of the typical Tolkien trappings, the Dragon Age games struggled to find an identity in the first two entries. Did it want to be an action game with RPG elements, or a 3D Baldur's Gate? Inquisition decides, hey, ¿por qué no los dos? And finds the best compromise it can that bolsters the strength of both styles. Character customization seems simple at first, with 4 races and 3 classes to choose from, but soon branches with a new armor system and skill trees galore. There's a grand frontier you can explore at your own pace, but it doesn't come at the expense of narrative or challenge progression. Your success in combat is largely based on your preparation in outfitting the characters, and if you want that Baldur's Gate feel, you can just let the fights play out, though the improved UI made me feel closer to the action than I ever did with the older titles. If that's not enough for you, you can take direct control of any one of your party members for some over-the-shoulder action, so execution is a factor. Speaking of party members, Inquisition has my favorite collection of companions, with the return of Varric Tethris, the charismatic dwarf, the mysterious Cole who just doesn't get what's going on, and of course, the Iron Bull.
I'm surprised you don't wear heavier armor on your blind side.
If I did that, I'd just be telling people where to hit me. As it is, every half-decent fighter sees the eye and thinks he can feint, then come in with a low stab. Then I chop his head off. It's like a gimme.
That can't work every time.
It doesn't, but taking a blade to the ribs is a pretty good teacher.
Between the voice performances and just how much impact you have on the story, this ragtag group of heroes feel as authentic as any other video game character I've met. This is my fellowship right here, and I love them all. Well, except for Sarah, she sucks. I play a lot of so-called choice-driven games, and with the best ones, I can usually suspend my disbelief enough to ignore the writers bottlenecking me to a certain ending. But in this game, I don't feel like I have to. This world feels alive, it responds to your choices, and still manages to have substance without me just having to choose a different colored laser at the end of it all. So when the Iron Bull turned on me in the DLC, I didn't feel like it was the work of a mean dungeon master. I felt like it was the honest result of my actions. I've never been so happy to be sad and betrayed. So, BioWare, when you're done ruining Mass Effect, you maybe want to come back to this one? Maybe? Well, if not, I'll just keep playing Inquisition. I'm sure there are at least a few conversations I haven't seen. Is it better for a game to look good or to feel good? Depends on the title, but I generally like my games to play well. Things like story and presentation are secondary. Very important, but secondary. Then again, I really like good visuals and theming. I said I like Mad World for its unique art style and Undertale for the out-of-the-box immersions, even if the actual gameplay in these games is simple and rather repetitive. Style over substance, I guess you could call it. Well, how about style and substance? These 3 words came to me over and over while I was playing Persona 5. Now, I've been a Persona fan for some time. Personas 3 and 4 could easily make my top 50 on their own. Though I have to admit, for how long they are, the dungeon crawling could be one hell of a grind after a while. Which was fine, since those characters and stories kept me hooked without any complaints. But Persona 5 is a 100-hour RPG, and it never dragged for me in the slightest. Except maybe for Okumura's Palace. Yikes. You play through a year in the life of this bespectacled student after he's transferred to a new home and school for doing the right thing. Over and over again, you witness real atrocities being committed by authority figures and you can't do anything about it, until a mysterious app allows you to enter a metaphysical plane and deal with these ne'er-do-wells on the down low. The instant feeling of angst and injustice pours fuel on this plot that stays burning the whole way through. Not that the dials turn to 10 the whole time. Between dungeons and major story events, the game knows how to take a break and give you time to hang with your growing cast of confidants. But there's always at least a small sense of urgency. The plot doesn't wait for you to side quest. Every activity, from attempting to progress through an enemy's stronghold to spending an evening with your best girl, burns in-game time. There's only so much you can do in a week, and your talking cat won't let you stay up past bedtime, so there's a weight to every decision you make. Friendships you make in the real world directly correlate to new abilities in the metaverse, and the personas you capture and money you collect in the metaverse open new opportunities in the real world. So you're never just grinding. You're trying to fill every unforgiving minute with your best 60 seconds. Everything's useful, everything matters. Random battles aren't just experience fodder. If you turn your brain off, you'll get KO'd, but the novel's staggering mechanic rewards you for being smart about your attacks. And the battle theme never gets old. It's like a jazzy, everlasting gobstopper. The soundtrack changes from the classy heist music in the dungeons to the chill backdrop of the coffee shop, giving your daily routine a nice balanced biorhythm, and every track is just cool, smooth. I don't know if I've ever seen another game nail its style so well that it permeates through every aspect of its design, right down to the menu screens. I could nitpick it if I wanted to, but I don't. Persona 5 knows what it wants to do, does it, and puts all the cards in front of you before stealing your heart. 5 years later, it remains a benchmark for JRPGs.
Yeah! Nice!
Yeah! Victory!
I submit to the court Exhibit 11, the Ace Attorney series.
Objection!
You just talked about loving Persona 5 for having great story and gameplay. Ace Attorney is essentially a visual novel with little actual interaction.
Objection! I just like it, okay? Get off my back. Ace Attorney's gameplay may just boil down to choosing the right items to show to the right people, but this is one of my favorite ongoing stories, which just happens to be in video game form. And while I'm not into most visual novels, I think Ace Attorney hits just the right level of engagement, charging you to solve these crimes and making sure you don't get the solution unless you actually sussed it out yourself. It's my kind of visual novel, in other words. Seeing the flaw in a witness testimony and selecting just the right evidence to blast the prosecutor's hair off, all to sweet Capcom chiptunes. It's hype as hell. Even the limited range of character movement actually improves the experience in my opinion. Most characters have less than a dozen emotes, so when you have the bad guy on the ropes and see them break down with all new reaction gifs, it feels like you just broke this case wide open. But I have to choose a favorite. Dual Destinies is an honorable mention for upping the ante, but my favorite is without a doubt Phoenix Wright's Trials and Tribulations for how well it closes the original Phoenix Wright trilogy. It wasn't the end forever, and since the book was reopened, we've had plenty of other great adventures, but Trials feels like the grand accumulation of everything in the series so far. We get new backstory on our hero and his spiritual mentor, my favorite prosecutor Godot, my favorite villain Dahlia, and no, that's not a spoiler, seriously, just look at her. And the most cases in a single game so far. Yes, I know Phoenix 1 had 5 as well, but that last case was more of a bonus, and for the most part, they're all winners. Okay, Recipe for Turnabout gets a little rough, but compared to the worst cases of other games, I think we're in good shape. While it builds off the character growth of Phoenix 1 and 2, Trials and Tribulations cases present a self-contained narrative centered around Mia's biggest unsolved case and one man's coffee-fueled quest for redemption. But several past plot threads work their way in for some nice resolution. Edgeworth, Von Karma, the feud of the Fae Clan, even Larry is back for finale. And it ends with what is to date my favorite case in the series, Bridge to the Turnabout, weaving together every character on the board and culminating in a battle of wits so heartbreaking I won't explain it here. I don't think I could if I wanted to. The whole thing seems a little convoluted, but when you're knee-deep in the game yourself, everything makes an astonishing amount of sense. Except this judge. How has he not been disbarred by now? I love the guy, but let's be real, the old man sucks at his job. If I could, I'd stuff the whole series into this spot, but as long as I'm choosing one, Trials and Tribulations is an easy verdict. Case closed.
My friends, it has been said that I like Metroidvanias. My friends, I like Metroidvanias. No, friends, I love Metroidvanias. I love the challenge, I love the exploration, the combat, secrets, I love tricky platforming and epic boss battles. Metroidvanias set in castles, in space stations, in underground tunnels, in ruined kingdoms, floating islands, mystical forests, mirrors, and in a subtropical paradise.
So we finally hit the top 10 and we're starting with Shantae? Yeah, that feels right. I'm a huge fan of Metroidvanias, obviously. I try to play as many as I can, but there's something different about the Shantae series. Mainly because Metroidvanias aren't usually so character-driven. I mean, sometimes there are NPCs to get lore dumps and items from, but an ongoing series with the same main cast? That's something you don't normally see in this genre, but it gives a lot of incentive every time I return to Sequinland. After 2 small but respectable entries, WayForward hit the ball out of the park with Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, once they finally had the technology and the budget to make the world brim with life. No hate on the latest game, Half Genie Hero does a lot right, but Pirate's Curse makes some smarter design choices that gel better with the kind of game it wants to be. For instance, Shantae at this point has lost her powers and therefore can't access her trademark animal transformations. I do like these powers for Shantae, they're a part of what makes her special, but they also tend to bog down the pace, constantly stopping to dance and transform. Half Genie Hero brings the animals back with a much smoother system, but I think Pirate's Curse had the better alternative. This time, the depowered Shantae has to grudgingly join up with her arch-nemesis Risky Boots, and over time she recovers Risky's pirate weapons and puts them to good use, both in fighting and navigation. These new moves are so sleek, you can easily chain from one to the other, and I love it when a Metroidvania can make me feel faster and more agile over time. Pirate's Curse also hangs together a bit better than Half Genie, if I'm splitting hairs. There's a few subplots, but it all revolves around Shantae and Risky versus the Pirate King, and every side quest pays off narratively in some way. And I love how many side characters we've accumulated over the course of the series. Squid Baron, Ammo Baron, Techno Baron, it kinda reminds me of Adventure Time with how many people just have Princess or Wizard in their name. You really can't go wrong with either game, and I love the visuals and extra modes of Half Genie, but Pirate's Curse just plays so well, I just want to speedrun it over and over again. And man, these character portraits look good in HD. Pirate's Curse remains the apex of the series, even now after Shantae and the Seven Sirens has come out. Love that game too, but I don't think it matches the quality of the former. Even so, no matter the Half Genie adventure, I'm always ready to go. Speaking of Metroidvania, favorite Metroid game. When I first started this list, I thought maybe Metroid Fusion. It's probably the most nostalgic for me. But I decided to be thorough, consider all the games in the series, and when all is said and done, Metroid Prime's pretty damn great, isn't it? And it had no right to be. A beloved side-scroller series goes into hiding for 10 years, then resurfaces with a new studio as a first-person shooter? The most overblown genre at the time, I might add. Yeah, this never ends well. Except it did. Retro Studios knew what they were doing and perfectly translated the eerie, isolated exploration of Super Metroid into what Miyamoto dubs a first-person adventure. Fun fact, in development, Retro Studios told Nintendo that they were having trouble making the player feel like Samus, since you don't see her on screen anymore. Miyamoto, in a moment of brilliant insanity, suggested, what if Samus had a bug head? Wouldn't that be cool? Cryptic at first, but this eventually became the visor. Alien guts splatter onto it, hot air steams it up, and under the right lighting conditions you can even see a reflection of Samus's eyes. Great attention to detail there. And that's just inside the helmet. For a console already a little graphically challenged in its time, the scenery of Talon 4 still holds up, as does the gameplay. It doesn't control quite how you'd expect for a first-person shooter, but once you get the hang of it, the generous lock-on feature and Samus's excellent mobility make the game more about positioning than aiming your reticle. You know, like 2D Metroids, just now it's 3D. A state-of-the-art 3D map system keeps you from getting too lost, but Retro also understood that sometimes the players need to get a little lost. That's how you find the best stuff. Between the revamped power suit upgrades, multiple cannons and visors, missile-guzzling super weapons, tons of energy tanks, and a really fun-to-use morph ball mode, Samus's slow build to phase-on powerhouse feels amazing. And the bosses actually challenge you enough to make you want those upgrades without being too cheap. Best Ridley fight ever! I don't even mind the Chozo artifact hunt towards the end. It was a good excuse to comb the world some more, and by this point, I knew Talon 4 like it was my backyard. If you don't like backtracking in Metroidvania games, I don't know what to tell you. Personally, I'll take any excuse to go to Phandrana Drifts to hear that sweet music again. Prime 2 and 3 are great in their own ways, and I'm stoked to see what Prime 4 has in store. But with the coolest weapons, bosses, and atmosphere, there is a reason why this Metroid is Prime. Have you ever played a game and felt like it was made for you? Like, sure, other people can enjoy it, but its qualities are so specifically tailored to your interests that the developers may as well have been inspired by your Google search history. Because that's how I feel about Guacamelee. I first heard of this indie darling from ComicFoil, who told me it was the Oscariest game he has ever played. He's not wrong. A sprawling Metroidvania with combat reminiscent of beat-em-ups and fighting games, rewarding chain combos with flashing multipliers and fanfares, all in a pop art style and a world of Latin American culture. You got luchadores, you got Dia de los Muertos, even past the obvious stuff, the game's full of deep-cut references to real-world lore. Heck, your Chozo mentor stand-in is Huay Chivo, a Mayan half-goat beast, and he's hilarious. Even the things I don't like about this game feel like they were marketed towards me. Like, there's an emphasis on color-coded attacks, with enemies having colored shields that you need to break in specific ways, mended by directional flashes. Like, seriously, did they know I was colorblind? I feel attacked. Not only for combat, you'll also use the Rooster Uppercut and the Dashing Derp Derp in complex... Why does that make me laugh still? You'll be using these moves in complex platforming gauntlets, so not only is the perfect 50-hit combo based on precise input, so is your ability to traverse some deadly chasms. The humor is just my style, 2-part smart genre subversion, 1-part background memes, which are made all the funnier by being in Spanish. I feel like I'm watching a grown-up version of Mucha Lucha, and for the 10 of you who just got really excited when I said that, buy this game, right now! For that matter, this game has a sequel that is just as good, if not probably better than the original. I've done a Let's Play for each of these games, and I had an absolute blast with both. If you're interested, please go check them out. But at the end of the day, whichever guac you prefer, both make me one happy Oscarito. As I explained before, I couldn't narrow it down to just one Mario game. Between the karting, the sports, and the RPGs, this plumber wears a lot of hats. It doesn't feel accurate to call them all just one franchise. But at the center of this pipe maze, Mario has always been about the core platforming experiences, which for the most part only get better with each installment. Mario 3 and Mario World, unbeatable classics. 64, a trailblazing 3D adventure. Sunshine? Weird, but wonderful. I didn't think they'd ever top Mario Galaxy in terms of scope, beauty, and creativity. Because where do you go once your hero's been to space? Well, you go back to Earth, but you do it better. If Breath of the Wild was a full free-roaming Zelda, Super Mario Odyssey is the closest I can imagine to an open-world Mario game that still actually works. Each level is a sandbox, at times literally, full of dozens of power moons to collect. Complete a story mission? Get a moon. Beat a boss? Get a moon. Some random shape that looks important? Yeah, that's probably a moon. I know some purists don't like this. It does kind of devalue the main collectible, but personally, this never really bothered me. Like, remember those freaking blue coins in Sunshine? They were annoying because they felt stashed away where people would never think to look. At least each moon is tied to a challenge, however small, that's much more rewarding than happening upon a crappy secondary collectible. For Odyssey, I combed every nook and cranny, and there's enough gameplay diversity to justify so many objectives. Mario's movement is more versatile than ever, with a new roll ability helping him cross the expansive worlds, and a jump bounce dive combo that you'd think would break the game. You'd think. But every time I got somewhere I thought was out of bounds, I'd find a pile of coins or something. You cheeky dick waffles, you knew I'd try to get up here! By this virtue, Nintendo's perfectly content knowing that the expert platformers can skip huge portions of their levels. In fact, they reward it! Any designer can put in different difficulty levels, but Nintendo did the harder thing, making levels that newer players can easily overcome with enough effort, but veterans can feel great breezing through. And as if Mario wasn't tricked out enough, he can now possess a myriad of other creatures for even more unique level design. Goombas, Bullet Bills, Cheep Cheeps, and a bunch of weird new faces. I love Uproot and his stretchy legs. It turns the game's mechanics on its head. You can beat this game with less than 20% of the total moons, and to some people that's a disappointment. To me, it's a challenge, mainly for that 100%. It's not for everyone, but Odyssey is for those with a certain Miyamotoan philosophy. If the game is fun, playing it is its own reward, which I think is felt in every weird facet of this weird game. Every Mario game has been a celebration of the franchise to some degree, sneaking in callbacks and remix jingles. But we knew Odyssey was different ever since that one trailer. Yeah, you know the one. I'm talking about Jump Up Superstar. That catchy, shamelessly on-the-nose big band bash. The thing is, it's not just a song from Pauline to Mario that summarizes the entire game. Though, it's that too. But to borrow an analysis from YouTuber NitroRad, this song is like a love letter from the game to you, celebrating all the good times you've had with the franchise before, while mixing in crazy new elements as a promise that, hey, Mario's not going anywhere anytime soon. We're not out of ideas. Ruined castles, soup worlds, a metropolitan city of weird realistic humans, it doesn't matter where we go. As long as there's gaps to jump and coins to grab, Mario is still #1. Super Smash Bros. I actually had the Wii U edition as a placeholder here for months, but I knew that in December of 2018, that space would be usurped. Each console Smash game has surpassed the last as far as I'm concerned, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate did not disappoint. Every character, every single character makes a grand return. Wouldn't 3 versions of Link feel redundant? Screw it, throw them all in there! Also, let's bring back Pichu and make him awesome! Not only does the roster put most fighting games to shame, it's impeccably well balanced. Sure, the tournament scene has its favorites, and Bowser Jr. is not one of them, but that stuff really only matters to the highest level of play. You can pick up anyone from Zippy Zero Suit to Fatzos like DDD, and if you're good enough, you'll get results. And okay, World of Light isn't the most robust one-player mode we've ever had, frankly, it's pretty repetitive, but as far as the base game goes, Smash has never been better. So that's why Ultimate is the best Smash Brothers. But why Smash Brothers in the first place? I love traditional fighting games, but Smash is anything but traditional. The intricate quarter circle inputs are replaced with more down-to-earth button combinations, so even playing Lucas for the first time, you'll at least know how to execute all of his moves, even if you don't know how to best do it yet. Or if you really miss those quarter circles, pick Ryu and Ken and you'll feel right at home. Smash is a lot friendlier to newcomers. Once you adapt to the utter chaos of it, you'll at least understand how to connect attacks. But if you put in the time, incorporate more techs and parries, this game is a blast competitively. The fact that you don't have a health bar, but rather a damage gauge that gets you knocked back further the more punishment you're dealt, it means those true combos require a little more strategy than just falling back on the same input string you always use. What might be a perfect flurry at lower percentages may leave an opening if the enemy is at high damage, and factoring in characters' various weight and movement options, you'll need to adjust your strategy to the situation. It's as much a platformer as a fighting game, and half the battle is in positioning and approach, often culminating in a frantic dance around the arena's edge while one player tries to recover. On the other hand, even when you're getting trounced by your opponent, the ring out system means it's never too late to turn things around. One good spike, and suddenly it's all tied up again. Ultimate is the latest in the line to improve things for all types of players. All stages now have Omega and Battlefield forms for no-frills rumbles, or turn up the items and have yourself an 8-player catastrophe. The best player won't always win, but you'll have some great stories to tell. The last reason, though maybe not the best, is the metric crapton of fan service. I love Nintendo so much. so seeing so many stages, assist trophies, song choices, spirit battles with funny in-joke stipulations, I'm in fanboy heaven. Not to mention some third-party games getting way more love from Smash than from their own developers. Look how many Castlevania remixes we got! And the attention to detail! Sonic drowns faster than any other character. There's an assist trophy of Guile that just crouches in Sonic booms the way cheap Street Fighter players do. The Pokemon trainers wear a Versus Seeker. And have you looked in the background of Great Bay? That's its exact layout from Majora's Mask. These loving tributes only make me more invested in the game's solid mechanics, and I've been trying my hardest to improve my skills. If I could go pro with any one game, this is the game I'd want it to be. I'm a long way off, but I see myself playing this game for a long time. Especially because Nintendo seems to be pushing the envelope further and further in regards to who can be accepted as a Smash fighter. The game is now content complete, and every new DLC reveal has been a smorgasbord of hype. Well, except maybe Byleth, but even then, I don't mind their inclusion either. Only time will tell where the series will go from here, but whatever comes, I will be there for it. It warms my heart to see beloved franchises continue to improve upon themselves over the years, or for indie developers to make their own more elegant versions of older games, but these last 5 entries are more old school. As for number 5, well, in 25 years, I don't think we've ever improved upon Chrono Trigger. We have other RPGs now with more content, better graphics, more complexity, and depth, but Chrono Trigger for what it is, strikes perfection. No frills, no fluff, just the good stuff. Chrono Trigger boots up with this beautiful pendulum intro that still gives me chills. You get to the Millennial Fair with all of its optional features, follow your blind date through a portal to the Dark Ages, save a princess with the help of a chivalrous frog knight, and this is all just the first 2 hours. Then you're in a distant future and learn that your planet is doomed for destruction by Lavos, one of the most intimidating monsters in RPG legend, and the rest is history. Prehistory, post-history, all kinds of history. Because it's a time travel story, and one that, to its massive credit, almost makes sense. Enough sense to tell a great story without getting bogged down by boring quantum details at least. The battle system finds balance in simplicity. You get 3 characters, they can attack, use items, or tech. That's it. Not that I don't like the more advanced RPGs, but even with its limited toolset, Chrono Trigger creates memorable and dynamic combat. There are no random encounters either, and most of the enemy groups have interesting gimmicks. They move around the battlefield, so you'll have to use techs that take advantage of certain geometry, employ different strategies, and targeting orders. For good measure, you and your team have their own double and triple techs, moves that combine the powers of characters for amazing results. Almost any combination will have at least one triple tech, so I find myself constantly swapping my party around, which is fine because I love all of these guys. And did you know that this game is only 15 hours long? Feels longer, doesn't it? Well, that's because Chrono Trigger is so efficient in its world building that it can establish 5 different time periods and guide you through them out of order without any pointless diversions. There are side quests that might tack another 2 hours on, you have a lovable party member from each one, something that its sequel Chrono Cross didn't quite get. Each member, with great character design by Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama, takes a personal journey that ties into the main plot. You don't have to level grind unless you want to. Enemy encounters are paced to give you just enough experience, and even if some bosses are really tough, the savvy strategist can best them just by changing up their strategy. Or, if you want, just grind levels and brute force your way past. You do you. And again, I've played longer RPGs that I just love. One of them is still coming up. But what they do in 40 hours, Chrono Trigger accomplishes in half that time, which leaves plenty of time for, and it invented this term, New Game Plus. This is a story about time travel after all, and as the court scene in the beginning of the game expresses, your actions have consequences across the entire universe. There are a dozen extra endings that you can collect after your first playthrough. Now, I've complained about this kind of split storytelling in other games, like the Jude Mila split in Tales of Xillia or the Ephraim Erica campaigns in Sacred Stones. But again, those are 40+ hour games. I'll replay them eventually, but after beating one route, I'm not quite ready to just hop back in for another half of my story. Chrono Trigger's main path stands on its own, but with its bite-sized length and the enhancements of New Game Plus, it's actually viable to run back through and see what other endings the game has to offer. And some of them get nuts! If you're lucky, you can track down a coveted DS or PS1 copy of the game with a few extra enhancements, but there wasn't much they could do to add to this package. It's an absolute treasure. I stand by my philosophy that there is no perfect video game out there. But Chrono Trigger is the one title in the entirety of video game history that I feel came the closest. Perfect doesn't mean favorite, however. And the Super Nintendo hosted one other RPG that I like a little more. I certainly talk about it more. Final Fantasy VI. I mean, 3 if it's on the actual Super Nintendo. I personally didn't try it until the Game Boy Advance port that got the title right, and fixed a lot of the iffy translation. Either way, 6 is my favorite Final Fantasy. I've actually heard a lot of backlash lately that this game is overpraised, and maybe it is. It seems to be the favorite of most countdown artists in my periphery. If you prefer 7 or 10 or whatever else, you have good reason to. I just prefer the more retro-style fantasies. I remember thinking it was so cool how this game blended industrial technology with the swords and sorcery style, with an in-game explanation for why we have both. You know, before Final Fantasy became straight-up science fiction. And this sprite work! I love how for the first time in the series, characters use the same sprites in battle as on the overworld. Not only did this save memory so they could make them more detailed and expressive, it also connects the story in and out of battle, and lets certain moments like Leo's last stand or these shenanigans with Gao play out more authentically. This way, we can actually introduce Realm's paint powers as both a story element and a gameplay mechanic simultaneously, for instance. To be less technical, Final Fantasy VI gives us the largest playable cast this side of Final Fantasy Tactics, and while you won't love every single one of them, they're all certainly unique in personality and abilities. Unlike later games that let you basically put any ability on any character, pre-7 games use the character's unique class and powers as part of their background. Setzer is the roguish gambler, Shadow is the edgy ninja, Edgar and Sabin's polar opposite natures are strengthened by their focus on technology and martial arts respectively. But there's still plenty of room for customization. The Magicite system lets you teach spells to anyone you want, even if some characters have better stats for it, and there's a ton of different equipment options and relics to support any style of gameplay. After a certain point, you can just ignore half the characters if you want, though it's gonna make that last dungeon quite a predicament. The story, which like Chrono Trigger is a lot shorter than you remember it being, throws you for loop after loop, first splitting the party so you can get to know all of them as individuals, then bringing them together with these weird army defense segments, and just when it looks like you're at the final boss, the villain actually wins, and you've got another half of a game to get through. Here in 2019, we're pretty used to post-apocalyptic scenarios, but back then, how many times did you actually see the heroes fail to save the world? And you can't just leave it there. You gotta pick yourself back up, collect your broken brotherhood, and stick it back to that sadistic clown in the sky. I know we've reviewed it to death, you might think there's no reason to go back to it at all, but I still look at modern RPGs and say, wow, this aspect is kind of flat. Why couldn't they do what Final Fantasy VI did? What more can I say about Fire Emblem Blazing Sword that I haven't already? I've already done a full Let's Play, a 5-minute reflection, and just recently I explained my undying love for Lady Lindis. It's my favorite entry in one of my favorite franchises. It was my introduction into the series, same for most Americans. I was playing a lot of tactics games on my GBA at the time, so my childhood friend Steven lent it to me. Having only known Fire Emblem from Melee, I remember spending the first few hours thinking, so where's Marth? I hear his music, so where is he? Oh, there's Roy. No. Ellawood? Who are you people? I wouldn't know for another few years that this was actually the prequel to Roy's story, which we still haven't seen an official release here in America. But not knowing its prequel status, Blazing Sword worked perfectly fine for me as a standalone story. Some people aren't as big on Lyn as I am. It's true, Lyn's story is kind of tacked onto the front of this thing. No doubt as a tutorial for us dumb Westerners getting into tactics games for the first time. But while she factors into the bigger narrative only slightly, I think it works great as an introduction, and made me really excited when Eliwood's group did go back to Lycia to pick up the Lindis League. That's not the only thing making Blazing Sword a great entry game for the franchise. You have just the right balance of difficulty. The game's never downright unfair on normal mode, but it'll punish you if you don't learn the mechanics in and out. And yes, Awakening would later improve things drastically, like better feedback on support progress and an optional casual mode without permadeath, but I like permadeath, so I wouldn't have turned it off anyway. What they haven't improved are these critical animations. The sprite work on these characters is a joy to behold, and I love how the colors just pop. Even when two units are identical, you can still tell who's who by the bold color choices. Each recruit has a surface charm, and there's more about them to unearth through support conversations. Nowadays I just look that stuff up, but learning different things about a character in every playthrough always kept me coming back. And unlike most other Fire Emblems, almost every single character is good. Some better than others, but even pre-promoted units like Marcus are perfectly suitable for the endgame. If you want to put in the work and level up Nino, you'll be rewarded. If you'd rather stick with Eric, that's fine too. Or if Eric died and you're short one Sage, Pent's got your back. It's great slowly growing from a plucky band of 5 to a standing army of knights and clerics. Without too much plot dumping, I understood the layout and politics of the world I was in, who the bad guy was, and what he was doing. When the party goes somewhere, I get why they go there, and that it'll probably lead to a fun, nail-biting skirmish. And, as a set, Eliwood, Lyn, and Hector make for the strongest lords in the series, narratively at least. Pray for good growths on Lyn and Eliwood, Hector will be fine. It's also interesting that this is a prequel, because the story revolves so much around the idea of legacy. Eliwood is challenged with the possibility that his royal father might be involved in some shady dealings. Hector needs to confront that his older brother, the Marquess, isn't immortal. And Lyn just found out about a family history she never even knew about. On the other hand, here's Nurgle trying to bring back the good old days when dragons walked the earth. His ancient comrade Athos trying to stop him so that the new world can live, and Ninian and Nils caught in the middle as, well,
spoilers.
And I don't think I realized all this when I was first falling in love with this game, but it was passively making the story better and better and making me love it more. It's like this game's archaic support system. You can't see these two units falling in love, but they are. Great mechanics, great strategy, great story, great look and feel. I've played it a dozen times already, and I'm pretty sure I'll play it at least 24 more. I might even use Lowen one of these days. You'd expect my top 3 or 4 games to come from my top 3 or 4 franchises, which makes number 2 a little strange because I don't like the Metal Gear series that much. I like it a great deal, but when I think of the franchise as a whole, there are maybe 2 games in there that I really love. The rest I mostly enjoy as an exercise in untangling continuity. But Snake Eater is different. I don't like it just as Metal Gear Solid 3. I like it almost the same way I like a movie. Just a playable movie. And I do mean playable, not the 2 minutes of stealth missions between cutscenes like Metal Gear Solid 4. By Metal Gear Solid 2, Hideo Kojima has already built a world of political intrigue, with convoluted schemes baked into even more convoluted schemes. But before sending Old Snake to put this messed up chess game to bed, Kojima decided instead to take a step backwards, a prequel about Snake's daddy, the original Snake, on a mission to prevent a Russian psychopath from starting World War III. As complicated as the series is, the internal plot of Snake Eater is pretty easy to follow. There's a madman with a dangerous super tank. Destroy the super tank, and stop the madman. There's more to it than that, of course, with power players like Eva, Ocelot, and the boss all hiding their own motivations. But like Blazing Sword, you can play through Snake Eater without the rest of the series without feeling lost. Not only is this version of Snake more lovable than ever, the connections he forges along the way are compelling, but not overwritten. And if you're familiar with the rest of the series, it gives you new insight into the greater narrative and more hype for the finale to come, Metal Gear Solid 4. This is the perfect prequel, recontextualizing the series and setting up for the future while still having a heart of its own. It's home to one of my favorite tragic boss fights in gaming after all. There's a reason I teared up when I first heard that Snake Eater remix in Smash Ultimate. With the story streamlined, it's easier to enjoy the robust tactical espionage available to you. Unlike the metal corridors of previous games, Snake Eater is largely outdoors, requiring survival skills and resource management. Snake's gotta eat, he's gotta address his injuries, and he's gotta keep himself camouflaged. This can really mess with the game's pace, and I have trouble defending that as a good decision, but for me, it left time to reflect on the plot and characters in between tense moments, and made for a pretty snazzy wilderness simulator. It's kind of like this super long ladder. This should be annoying, and to some, it might be. But there's so much atmosphere that Kojima somehow makes it work. As usual, Kojima peppers your playtime with surreal and memorable moments. Without needing appendices of backstory, the cool bosses can just be cool bosses, like the Ends No Frills Sniper Gauntlet, or the Sorrow's River of Death that uses your kill count against you. You ever save and come back during the interrogation scene? Snake has this crazy dream sequence that plays like Devil May Cry. What the hell was that about? Well, either way, it was awesome. It's an odd emotional roller coaster only a true auteur could have made, and that wouldn't have worked nearly as well in a film or novel. You need to be the one who pulls that trigger on the final boss. If you've only watched playthroughs or heard about it, you don't understand how powerful this moment is. Weird, wonderful, and full of drama. You almost forget how silly the name is. I really do wish I had something more surprising to pull out at the end of all this. Because I am not at all unique for having The Legend of Zelda as my favorite franchise, and Ocarina of Time has topped so many all-time best lists. Maybe too many. I won't pretend that Ocarina of Time is a perfect game, or even the best Zelda game. But feelings are feelings, and my love for this game transcends all logic and numerical value. After so many years of praise, it's become trendy now to look at this game more critically. That's fair, there's as much to learn from this game's shortcomings as its strong points. But don't be mean about it, please. It's a lot like Undertale, really. Yes, it is rather overpraised, and some people ignore its flaws and put it on a pedestal. But something about it touched the hearts of thousands. Those feelings are real, it's not just nostalgia. Even if I went back and discovered it was worse than I remember, the original impact it left on me still has value. So, let's take a look. Ocarina of Time brought the high adventure and puzzling dungeons of the Zelda series elegantly into the third dimension. Jagged as they may be, the dozens of weird and wonderful characters you meet along the way, the time-honored locales, the strange bosses, they sucked me in on my first playthrough. I spent a few years living in Hyrule. Even when I wasn't playing it, I was at school sketching Link and Saria on a piece of paper, or trading secrets with my friends. I couldn't afford a player's guide and I haven't figured out the whole internet thing yet, so I had to work out these puzzles for myself. Some of the dungeons are really dark. There was an actual sense of fear the first time I faced the Lizalfos in Dodongo's cavern, or walking into Kakariko's graveyard. Oh hell no! I didn't want to touch anything. But it's the only way to continue the game, so proceed I did. I triumphed over the wretched Dead Hands. I solved the mystifying Lost Woods maze. I outwitted those Gerudo and even overcame a fear of drowning to get that note from Ruto. And I actually think the time travel is really well implemented, at least in the way it makes you feel. At the beginning of the game, you're told that all the Kokiri who leave the forest eventually die. Little did I realize, they weren't warning me about the beasts out in Hyrule Field. They were warning me about growing old. It turns out Link's a Hylian, not a forever young Kokiri, so his leaving for his adventure means he'd rather face the dangers of the world than stand by in secure ignorance. This setup pays off when Link travels 7 years into the future. Suddenly, your childhood is gone. You're an adult, whatever that means, and the world you've come to know in the first 10 hours of gameplay is, well, worse. The bustling marketplace is now just silent slums full of re-deads. Lon Lon Ranch is under crappy new management, and when you go back home, no one recognizes you. Luckily, you can turn back time whenever you want, and while it's not utilized to the fullest, Link has to deal with some problems in the past just as much as in the future. It's kind of fitting, actually, that people accuse fans of just being nostalgic, because this game is kind of about nostalgia. But if the game taught me anything, it's that it's okay to go back. You have to address some new turmoil when you get older. There's no avoiding that, but it's okay to carry a bit of your childhood with you. Oh, and Z-targeting was a great idea, and Navi's not that bad. Come off it, guys. This would be a good place to end it if it weren't for one more issue. Ocarina of Time actually isn't my only favorite game. 2 years later, Nintendo rushed out Majora's Mask, which uses the same engine and many recycled assets and music, but does something completely different with them. Less dungeons, more to do on the way to those dungeons, tons more side quests, 4 transformation masks, and a whole lot of subtext we've been writing theories and creepypastas about ever since. The reuse of assets adds to the unsettling atmosphere of the game, being that all of these faces and characters are familiar, but uncanny. It's like a dark reflection of Ocarina of Time complete with time travel. Majora's Mask uses its scenario to show us true darkness. The world will perish in 3 days, and at any point you can look up and see the unfriendly reminder looming in the sky. NPCs all respond to this news in their own way. Many in denial and trying to hold the town festival in spite of the obvious, others running, hiding, or just reflecting on the disappointment their lives turned out to be. You can turn back time whenever you want, but if you explore during the last 6 hours, there's some real sad humanity on display. Remember the Swordmaster cowering in his closet? Or how Crimea is totally giving her little sister alcohol to dull her senses? The postman who wants to run but can't forsake his duties? And the wedding! Oh god, the wedding! With Ocarina, I have a lot of memories of the countryside and how it changes in 7 years. But with Majora's Mask, it's more about the people. It's certainly not about the dungeons, they kind of suck in this game. Besides the Stone Tower, of course. But helping out townsfolk and filling in the bomber's journal, that feels amazing. So, what do I do here? Do I pick the age-old classic on which modern Zelda was built on? Or do I pick the cult classic that's unlike anything before or since? Well, it's my list. I pick both. A tie for my favorite game ever. I always saw these two as sister games anyway, especially with how similar they look and sound. They're the flint and stone that sparked my love for the Zelda franchise, and without them, I don't know how much into video games I'd have become. I can't think of a game before them that made me feel the way I do. I saved Hyrule and Termina and thought, I know these people aren't real, but for some reason, I know this is important. Not only did they show me the emotional complexity video games were capable of, but like Link, I grew up with the lessons of these games. They go hand in hand. Ocarina of Time taught me to keep my past in my heart, and Majora's Mask taught me how to let it go. The world is ever changing after all, and like this franchise, we are all striving to be better. But whatever happens, I can't imagine a world where I don't love The Legend of Zelda.